Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto becomes the nine-tail power successor and surpassed him. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A ninja academy where several young children sought to become ninja were busy chattering amongst one another as they discussed from simple matters such as weapons to the most advanced ninja arts being jutsu. Others on the other hand were discussing who they would have on their teams and even what their Junin sensei would be like. Suddenly, without warning, the classroom door flew open as a 20-year-old man walked in. The 20-year-old stood 5, had light brown hair that was done up in a high ponytail, brown eyes, and a scare that ran from underneath his left eye to his right. He was wearing blue pants, a blue long-sleeve shirt, blue sandals, and he wore a green vest that had 6 pockets on the front. Calmly he allowed his eyes to scan over his students. The first person he set his eyes on was a male that was no older than 12 years old, had golden sun-kissed hair along with a blood-red tips, his eyes were a cold cerulean blue, he stood around 4'6", and he looked well built for a child his age. He was wearing a black shirt with the kanji for blood on the front in the color of blood red, black cargo pants, black ninja sandals with hidden retractable blades hidden in the soles, and on top of that he wore a black trench coat that reached to his ankles, while the kanji for death was present on the back in a deep purple. If one were paying enough attention, they would have noticed the 9 golden tails swished behind him before they fully disappeared, almost as if they weren't there. The boy's name was none other than Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He was wearing his hide on his forehead. The boy was also the container for the most powerful of all the creatures in the land, the Kyuubi no Kitsune. His father, the Yadame Hokage, Minato Namikaze, wanted him to be seen as a hero for containing the legendary beast. Then shortly after it happened, the loss of his first, best, and only friend was killed in front of him. The only good thing that came out of it was the gaining of a Taijutsu, the legendary Sharingan, and then the final form, the Mangekyo Sharingan, but at a terrible price of losing someone who was beyond precious to him. Let's just that in the end no one dared to ever approach the child except for a select few. Naruto, you suffered so much and look at what it's made you become. If anyone ever had a reason to destroy this village, it's you, Naruto. Thought the teacher before he continued to allow his eyes to wander over the rest of his students. The next person his eyes landed on was a young female that was also no older than 12 years of age, had black hair with blue streaks running through it that reached to her mid-back, her eyes were coal black, and she stood 4'5", and she was well built for her age. She was wearing a blue Chinese top with ruby red dragons surrounding a red fan with a white handle on her back, white shorts, blue sandals, and on her left leg, she wore a shuriken and kuni pouch. Her height was currently on her head. The girl was Sasuke Uchiha, and the last remaining loyal Uchiha in Konoha left after her elder brother killed the whole clan. She too also unlocked the Mangekyo Sharingan the same night and killed her brother, but not before he told her something that she never told anyone. She was also one of the few who was able to approach Naruto. The third person was another male that stood 4, had spiky brown hair that was being held back by his height, looked no older than 12 years old, and he wore sunglasses. The young adult wore a light gray trench coat that covered his lower face, blue pants, and blue sandals. He also wore a kuni and shuriken pouch on his left leg. That boy's name was Shino Aburam, and the current and only heir to the Aburam clan. The Aburam clan was unique since they willingly allowed bugs to inhabit their bodies, and in return the bugs would assist them in battle. The fourth person was a female that stood 4'5", had blonde hair that was pulled up into a ponytail that reached to the mid-back, and had light blue eyes. She was wearing a purple tank top, along with a matching purple skirt, while her height was being used for a belt. That girl's name was Ino Yamanaka, heir to the Yamanaka clan. The Yamanaka clan specialized in mind manipulation jutsu. Right next to Ino was a girl that stood 4, had pink hair that reached to her waist, along with her height holding her bangs back, and she also had forest green eyes. She was wearing a red Chinese-style dress with a white circle in the center, while a line ran down the center of the dress, reached to her knees with slits on both sides, black bicycle shorts, and blue ninja sandals. She also had a kuni and shuriken pouch on her right leg. The girl's name was Sakura Haruno, and she came from a civilian family with no ninja history. She was one of the many people who feared Naruto but at least attempted to be nice to, even if it meant sparing her family's life for her own. Next to Sakura was a male that was slouched on his desk fast asleep. The boy stood 4'4", had black hair placed up to look like a pineapple, black eyes, and looked completely at peace. He was wearing a fishnet shirt with a gray shirt on top, along with his hide on his left arm, black pants, blue sandals, and a shuriken and kuni pouch on his right leg. The boy's name was Shikamaru Nara, and the heir to the Nara clan. The clan specialized in shadow manipulation jutsu and having excellent tactical strategy skills. Sitting next to Shikamaru was another boy who was busy eating a bag of potato chips. The boy stood 4'3", had light brown hair, red swirls on his cheeks, and black eyes. He was wearing a white shirt with a red symbol on the stomach, a green short-sleeve shirt over the other, a white scarf wrapped around his neck, grey shorts, and blue sandals. He also wore bandages from his wrists up to his elbows. The boy was Choji Akimichi and current clan heir to the Akimichi clan. The Akimichi clan excelled in body jutsu that could increase any part of their body or the whole body if needed. He was also rather husky. Sitting behind Choji was another boy. This boy stood 4'2", had wild unkempt brown hair, brown eyes with a slit running through the center, and red tattoos on his face that looked similar to fangs. He was wearing a grey sweat jacket, brown pants, and blue sandals. On his head was a small white puppy. The boy's name was Kiba Inuzuka, and his puppy's name is Akamaru. Kiba was also the clan heir for the Inuzuka clan and had an older sister. His family were proficient in team combat. Finally sitting next to Kiba was a young female. The female stood 4'1", had midnight blue hair and white pupilless eyes. She was wearing a large pale jacket, blue ninja pants, and blue ninja sandals. The girl was Hinata Hyuga and the current heir to the Hyuga clan. The clan is well known because of their famed Eye Dojutsu, the Byakugan. Despite that fact, she was constantly ridiculed by her own father, sister, and the elders of her clan because of her shy and caring nature. After a few months though, she apparently had enough as she defeated her sister in a spar and told off not only her father but the elders as well. It was even stated that she was going to become the second Ice Queen of Konoha. Well, let's get this over with, thought Iruka before he walked to the center of the room. First of all, I would like to congratulate all of you on passing and becoming full ninja of Konoha. Now then I will announce the teams. Proudly stated Iruka, only to realize that no one was paying attention to him. Silently he released a sigh before he started to perform a few hand signs. Genjutsu. Onihitsu. Silently whispered Iruka before he took in a large breath. Everyone shut up and sit down. Shouted Iruka as his head grew 4 sizes large, causing everyone to shut up and sit down. But now that I have your attention. The teams are as follows. Team 7. Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, and Hinata Hyuga under Jinin-sensei Kakashi Heikate. Team 8. Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akimichi, and Shikamaru Nara in Jinin-sensei Asuma Sarutobi. Team 9 is still in circulation from last year, so Team 10. Kiba Inuzuka, Sakura Haruno, and Shino Aburam under Jinin Kurina Yuhi. Stated Iruka, causing quite a few people to groan in disappointment and others to silently cheer in their heads. Now then, your Jinin-senseis will be here after lunch, so until then you are free to do as you please, just remember to be here when you're Jinin-sensei. Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata, I would like for you to remain behind though. Said Iruka in a serious tone before everyone other than the earlier 3 left the classroom while snickering at their misfortune. Iruka-sensei, why did you ask for us to remain behind? Asked Sasuke as she and her teammates walked down to Iruka's desk. I just wanted to talk to all of you and I'm not your sensei anymore, so just call me Iruka. Said Iruka with a smile while everyone else just smiled in their own unique way. Does this mean that I can remove it? Coldly asked Naruto as he looked at his older brother figure. That is your decision and yours alone, Naruto. Simply stated Iruka as he looked Naruto in the eyes. We're going to my house. Simply stated Naruto as he walked out of the classroom with the others following after looking at as if he were crazy. 5 minutes later. Okay, here we are. Said Naruto as he stopped in front of a building. The building was 4 stories tall, run down, rat and critter infested dump. Naruto's teammates were calm on the outside, but internally they were cursing whatever god they could think of for causing Naruto to live in this dump. Iruka on the other hand just smiled sadly as he looked at the building, already knowing that Naruto lived here. Silently everyone followed Naruto up to the 4th floor and noticed graffiti along the wall. Some of the graffiti said, "Die demon, crawl into a ditch and die hellspawn," and a rather common one, "You killed my family Kyuubi, and I'll kill you." Internally once more the girls were bristling with anger but opted to remain calm. For a few more minutes everyone followed Naruto up until he stopped at the last door. What happens behind this door stays behind this door, understand? Said Naruto in his usual cold tone. Of course Naruto, you have our word. Said everyone while they noticed him relax slightly before he cut his finger and ran the blood over the door. Shortly after the door opened and everyone stepped inside before they stopped and their jaws fell to the ground. The room was extremely small, having only 8-foot walls and the ceiling only being roughly 6 feet in the air. The walls were filled with holes, peeling paint, and water stains. The kitchen was only 2 feet by 4 feet, while the rest of the room acted as a bedroom living room. There was a single hallway on the right wall that led to what everyone guessed was the bathroom and closet. Most of the floor was covered in sweat and blood stains. The bed mattress was old and had material coming out of it, but otherwise most of the major holes had been sewed up. Almost all of the covers on the bed were ripped and had holes in them, but that wasn't what shocked them. No, it was the fact that there was a female sleeping in the bed. The female stood 5'1", had deep blood red hair that reached down to her waist, deep crimson eyes with a black slit running through the center, had a E-cup breast size, and she looked no older than 12. Currently the only thing that she was wearing was the bed covers. "Hey, I'm back," said Naruto as he walked over to the sleeping female. Silently everyone just watched as the female latched onto Naruto's waist before she mumbled something into it. "By the way, I have guests with me," said Naruto once more, causing the female to sit up in sudden alarm while pulling a kuni out from underneath the bed. "Who the hell are you and what have you done to Naruto?" demanded the female as she held the kuni to Naruto's neck, causing a faint trail of blood to come out. "Relax, it's me and I just brought my teammates here. Oh, and get some clothes on," said Naruto as if it were an ordinary subject. Immediately after that the female looked behind Naruto only to blush heavily before she ran towards the bathroom. "Sorry, she isn't used to having others over other than the Hokage," said Naruto as he motioned for the others to take a seat wherever they could find one. "Okay, so why are we here again?" asked Sasuke as she looked at Naruto, who just stared at the ceiling before he performed a single hand sign and two more of him popped into existence. "You two go and make some lunch," Naruto stated before the clones walked off. "The reason why we are here is so we can understand one another. I'm going to tell you everything about me and then after that you will also be required to do so," stated Naruto with authority in his voice. "Now as you already know, I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. My parents were Kushina Uzumaki and Minato Namikaze. Now on the day of my birth the Kyuubi no Kitsune attacked my father being Hokage at the time, decided to seal the Kyuubi into me, his only son. His reason was that if he couldn't sacrifice his own son, how could he ask a villager to do the same for him? He also wanted me to be seen as a hero for containing the Kyuubi," started Naruto before he released a sad sigh. "Sadly he was wrong. Instead of treating me like a hero they treated me like trash. No, not it was more like I was something less than dirt. For 6 years I suffered under the constant torment of the villagers, mostly it was name calling and beatings. No matter what I took them. Then I met her. Her name was Mitsumi and she was an orphan like me and became my best and only friend. For 2 years we pulled pranks, stole food and even lived together, but that all changed," said Naruto in a happy tone before it turned grim with remorse, self-doubt and hatred. "On the day of my 9th birthday the villagers kidnapped her and me. They had us tied up in chairs," started Naruto before his eyes bleed red, and the next thing everyone knew they saw a young boy and girl tied to chairs. The boy looked to be 9 years old, had spiky blood hair, cerulean blue eyes, stood only 3'5", 3 whisker-like marks on his cheeks, and looked malnourished. He was wearing a raggedy white t-shirt covered in dirt, black shorts, and he was barefoot. "Naruto?" everyone thought in confusion before they turned towards the young girl. The girl also looked to be 9 years old, had long black hair that was tied into a ponytail, light brown eyes, stood 3'4", and she also looked malnourished. She was also wearing a raggedy white t-shirt that was covered in dirt, black shorts, and she was also barefoot. Suddenly without warning the room was filled with light as a door behind all of them was opened, causing the two genin and shiknin to turn around in shock. Standing in the doorway were several villagers, at least 4 shiknin, 1 genin, and 2 anbu members. Slowly all of them walked into the room until they were standing in front of Naruto and the girl in 3 single file lines. Out of all the people in the room only one person stood out. A man that stood 5'6", had emerald green eyes and pink hair. He was wearing a red shirt, red pants, and red cloth shoes. "Comfortable?" asked the pink-haired man while he motioned to the 2 anbu to guard the door while he walked towards Naruto and right through Iruka, Sasuke, and Hinata. "What was that?" wondered the 3 as they turned around. "Well, what do you want?" asked Naruto as he looked at the pink-haired man. "Oh, just about the same thing as everyone in this room wants from you. Your blood, Kyuubi," stated the pink-haired man with an insane look on his face while his voice dripped with hatred. "What are you talking about? Naruto isn't the Kyuubi," shouted the girl before she was slapped across the face. "Shut up, you little demon slut," snarled out the pink-haired man while many in the crowd grinned at the girl's pain. "Now where were we?" started up the pink-haired man once more as he took up a thinking pose. "Oh yeah, now I remember." Not long after finishing the man pulled out a kuni before he quickly stabbed it into Naruto's left hand, causing him to scream in pain. Shortly after all of the people in the crowd were throwing broken glass, rusty kitchen knives, kuni, shuriken, and rocks at Naruto. "What are you people doing? Stop it," shouted the female once more as she struggled against her restraints only to receive a backhand to the face. It wasn't long before the crowd split up into 2 different groups, each designated to torturing their victim to death. For hours on end Iruka, Sasuke, and Hinata watched as the people did unimaginable damage to Naruto and the girl. They watched as the people broke both legs and arms before they would stick senbon into the major nerve locations on their broken arms and legs, causing them further pain. They would then watch as some of the Chunin would cast minor jinjutsu on Naruto, forcing him to watch as the girl was raped before him, while the girl watched the several hundred ways they would torture them. After that they were forced to watch as some of the civilians took torches and placed them out, leaving them only smoldering before they would press the hot tips onto the children causing severe burns. "So how do you feel?" asked a pink-haired man while he absent-mindedly picked up a sword and inspected it. He then pulled out one of his own hairs before he dropped it onto the blade. The second the hair strand struck the blade it immediately was split into two. Naruto could say nothing as watched a pink-haired man while constantly looking over to the girl who looked very much already dead. "Nothing to say. Well, maybe this will get you to talk," said the man as his voice rose as he swung the sword at the girl. Almost acting on instinct, Naruto attempted to jump in the way of the blade, only to be stopped by his restraints and forced to watch as the blade went straight through the girl's heart, causing her to scream in pain while coughing up blood. "Utsumi-chan," whispered Naruto underneath his breath while his eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, but did you say something, demon?" asked the pink-haired man as he twisted the blade 360 degrees before roughly pulling it out of Mitsumi's chest. He then proceeded to flick the blood off of the blade onto Naruto's face as his eyes began to cry blood. "I'm gonna kill you," whispered Naruto once more while he began to clench and unclench his fists. "I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you, could you please repeat that?" asked the pink-haired man while he leaned in close to Naruto. "I said I'm gonna kill you," said Naruto once more, only louder, while the pink-haired man backed away and turned his back on him. "That's what I thought you said," stated the man before he quickly turned on his heel and stabbed the sword straight through Naruto's heart while releasing an insane laugh. Silently Iruka, Hinata, and Sasuke watched in anger as Naruto lost consciousness before they too began to notice the room was changing. The room was slowly turning into a long hallway with cracked walls, pipes overhead, and ankle-length water covering the floor. Floating in the water was Naruto looking up towards the ceiling with dead eyes before he looked down the hallway, and the others doing the same saw a red glow. Calmly Naruto walked towards the light while the rest of them followed. It wasn't long before they found themselves in another room that was huge and had a gate at the other end. On the gate was a single piece of paper that held the kanji for seal on it. Silently they watched as Naruto walked towards the gate before he stopped as a large clawed hand came out of the gate and stopped a few inches from Naruto's face. Naruto just stood there with his cold dead eyes looking past the claw and directly into a pair of blood-red eyes that were trained on his own. "So this is my container?" asked a voice as rows of shark teeth appeared and then the whole body of a large kitsune with 9 tails. "So you are the reason why I'm hated?" stated Naruto with no emotion while he continued to look in the Kyuubi's eyes. "What do you mean?" growled out the Kyuubi while its eyes seemed to change from rage to confusion. "Look through my memories," was all Naruto said before he walked towards the cage and sat down looking down the hallway he came from. Kyuubi on the other hand was silently watching several of Naruto's memories while Iruka, Hinata, and Sasuke also watched every beating, comment, and other things that happened to Naruto over the course of his short life. At the end of it Kyuubi was releasing large amounts of killing intent while it looked at Naruto in a new light. "Interesting, my own father sacrificed me. Fool," sneered Naruto while he shook his head in disgust. "You went through my memories, didn't you?" silently growled out Kyuubi. "Only the ones in which you were sealed into me. I just wanted to see if the Yondaime would mention my parents," stated Naruto in a cold tone while the Kyuubi mumbled something about dumbass blondes. "Okay, how would you like for the chance to give the same if not greater pain to those villagers?" asked the Kyuubi as it looked at Naruto. "I would love to do that, Kyuubi-chan," stated Naruto with a smile that was filled with evil intentions while the Kyuubi looked at Naruto with a dumbfounded expression on her face. Almost immediately after the Kyuubi quickly regained its thought process by shaking its head. "Then pull off the seal," Kyuubi said as it pointed to the seal with the tip of its tail. Silently Naruto looked at it before he jumped up and grabbed a hold of 2 of the bars. He then proceeded to climb up until he was face to face with the seal. Quickly Naruto grabbed the seal before he completely ripped it off before he was blasted back into the real world. Once more everyone watched as the room changed back into the same room they were in earlier with the civilians just about to leave the room before they were stopped as black flames rose up from the ground. Quickly the civilians turned around only to have their rage become more prominent on their face at seeing Naruto freed from his bonds and standing up. "I'm going to kill you," said Naruto as he rose his head up, causing all the civilians to step back in shock. Naruto's eyes were now a deep blood red with a black pupil and 3 black comma marks spinning in around the center. "Tsukiyomi," whispered Naruto before everyone, other than Iruka, Hinata, and Sasuke, found themselves bound to crosses while Naruto stood in front of them while a female stood behind him. The female stood 5'1", looked no older than 20, had deep blood red hair that reached down to her waist, and deep crimson eyes with a black vertical slit running through the center. She was wearing a blood-red kimono with a white fox with 9 tails cutting along the edge that also did little to hide her E-cup bust. Behind her lightly swaying were 9 blood-red tails. "For the next 72 hours you will experience all my pain that I have been placed through for the last 9 years. Have fun," said Naruto without emotion before he disappeared along with the female, leaving behind villagers and ninjas screaming at him to force him to release them. Suddenly, without warning, Naruto collapsed while holding his hands over his stomach, while deep crimson chakra covered him before it started to concentrate over his stomach. Not long after, the chakra burst forth before it began to form into a small red fox with 9 tails in front of Naruto. Shortly afterward, both Naruto and the fox fell to the ground and the room began to rapidly change before Hinata's, Sasuke's, and Iruka's eyes. Now they were standing in a hospital room with Naruto laying on a hospital bed with several machines connected to him monitoring his heart rate, blood pressure, and several other vital aspects. Naruto thought everyone sadly before the hospital room door opened and a man stepped in. The man stood 6'1", had a white beard on his chin, and an old face that radiated with sadness and several other emotions that were constantly changing. The man was wearing a white robe with a red line running down the center of the robe and a square hat that had a single red triangle with a white kanji for fire. "Good afternoon, Naruto, how are you feeling?" asked the old man as he walked towards Naruto before he sat down on the bedside. "How do I feel?" reiterated Naruto as he shook from either rage or sadness, but they couldn't tell. "For starters, I not only get attacked on my birthday once again, but this time the villagers took the liberty of also torturing Mitsumi-chan. Shortly afterwards they kill her in front of me. Then after that I find out that I'm the container for the Kyuubi no Kitsune and the son of the Yondaime Hokage. So how do you think I feel?" shouted Naruto with his voice rising with every word he said, while tears of blood flowed freely from his eyes. "Naruto, I should have told you, but I was afraid and your father didn't want you to know until you were its container, until you were at least a Chunin," stated the old man as he looked at Naruto while he removed his hat, showing that he had very little hair. "What, were you afraid that I wasn't mature enough to handle the information?" growled out Naruto while his whisker birthmarks grew thicker and darker, while a purple aura started to surround him. "Naruto, please, you need to calm down," said the old man as he stood up and backed away just from the killing intent that Naruto was releasing and the fact that Naruto had the Sharingan. "Calm down. You want me to calm down? Especially after everything that this village has put me through?" shouted Naruto in rage while he glared at the old man. "Naruto, you need to calm down," stated another voice that radiated with authority, causing Naruto to physically stiffen. Slowly Naruto and the old man turned their attention to a small fox that stood in a corner of the room while it walked towards them before it jumped onto the bed and curled up into Naruto's lap. "What, you never seen a fox speak?" asked the fox while it looked at Naruto and the old man through the corner of its eyes. To be quite honest, the only animals that I have ever seen speak were summons, and as far as I know no one in the village has a fox summoning contract," said the old man while he looked at the fox. "Well then I guess I should at least tell you who I am. For starters, I'm the Kyuubi no Kitsune," said the fox while Naruto began to lightly pet the fox on the head. "Holy shit," was all the old man could say while he grabbed Naruto and pulled him away from the Kyuubi. "Okay, let me clear something up here, Ninjin. I was forced into attacking the village by an Uchiha. More specifically Madara Uchiha. Second, the reason why I'm not hightailing it out of this village is because 1. I'm still bound by the Shinigami's seal, 2nd. I'm not leaving this kid alone in a village that will attempt to kill him, and 3. I gave the boy the Sharingan and he is going to need someone to train him in using it to its utmost potential. So I thought, why not let the creator of the Sharingan teach him, and the creator is me," stated the Kyuubi while it looked out of the window nearby. "Why would you do that?" asked the old man while he watched the Kyuubi with distrust in his eyes. "I just want to fix as much damage that I caused for the boy. I even plan on him signing the summoning contract for the foxes," stated the Kyuubi while it continued to look out the window and the old man continued to look at Kyuubi with distrust before he released a sigh. "Very well then, put, just don't kill anyone," said the old man while he released Naruto, who just walked back to the bed and sat down before the Kyuubi placed its head underneath Naruto's left hand. Silently Naruto just gently scratched behind the Kyuubi's ears while releasing purees of happiness. "Before I forget, there is one more matter that needs to be attended to. When Naruto and his friend Mutsume were captured, they were tortured, as you know, but during the torture they killed the girl, which allowed for me to temporarily pull Naruto in his mindscape because of him being in emotional stress. While we were in the mindscape I convinced Naruto to release me, which has in turn allowed for me to escape from the seal. Sadly, to keep the boy alive, I had to pass the title of Kyuubi onto him. Roughly around the time he turns 18 he will have all 9 tails. After that he will be required to take a test to see if he is worthy of the title. I will of course be the giver of said test, if only because I was the former Kyuubi, and if I am unable to do so, one of, if any, survived, my guards will give the test," said the Kyuubi before it took a large gulp of air and released it slowly. "Thank you, Kyuubi-san, for telling me this. I will be certain that no one finds out about this, and if they do they will be immediately killed along with anyone with a 5-mile radius of the speaker," said the old man while he placed his hat back onto his head. Did you find Matsume's body?" asked Naruto with his now dead voice while he looked at the floor and petted the Kyuubi. Naruto, when we found you, you weren't an ally. We don't know who brought you there, but we feel that he or she wanted you to be found. Do you know anything about this Kyuubi-san? Asked the old man while he stood up. I'm afraid not, but do not worry Naruto, we will find her body. Said the Kyuubi while it placed its paws on Naruto's shirt before it began to lick the dried blood off of his face. Naruto, after you leave the hospital come see me and we can then discuss your inheritance and I'll treat you to as much Orochi ramen you want. Suggested the old man with a smile. Of course Hokage Jiji. Said Naruto with a small smile, and even though it was small the old man knew that this was a true smile and not one of those fake ones that he placed on. I'll see you later then Naruto-kun. Said the Hokage as he left the room. Now once again Iruka, Hinata and Sasuke found the room to change before it returned to the apartment room that Naruto led them to. Naruto was still sitting on the bed and the red-haired female was sitting next to him. Naruto, whatever happened to Mitsumi's body? Asked Hinata, already getting the feeling that this wasn't going to be an easy answer from him. We never found it. Kyuubi picked up a scent of one of her old guards. She believes that he may have taken the body, but for what reason we don't know. Simply stated Naruto while the woman just hugged him lightly. You already know who I am, but just in case you don't know, I'm the former Kyuubi no Kitsune, but you can just call me Natsuki. Said Natsuki as she smiled at all of them. Well, now that you know about me I believe that it's Hinata's turn. Said Naruto as everyone looked at her. I know what I'll show you. Stated Hinata before she started to perform hand signs and stopped on Rad. Ninjutsu art. Memory viewing. Quickly stated Hinata before the room began to change. Slowly the room began to take on shapes until they took on specific forms. The room had changed from the apartment to a large room with tatami floors. In the center of the room stood two girls who were fighting against one another and a male that watched the fight. The first female looked to be no older than 11, maybe 12 years of age, stood 4'1", had midnight blue hair and pure white eyes with a lavender tint. She was wearing a black bodysuit that hugged all of her curves just right. The second female looked no older than 9, maybe 10 years of age, stood 3'4", had pure black hair that reached just past her neck and pure white eyes. She was also wearing a black bodysuit, but it was rather loose on her. The man who watched the two fight looked to be 20 years old, stood 5'9", had black hair that reached just a few inches from his waist and pure white eyes that seemed to radiate a coldness. He was wearing a white shirt, white pants, and a brown robe. Silently without sound the girls continued to trade blows with one another, with an occasional one striking certain points on the body before a faint blue light also struck the same place. Every now and then the girls would part only to charge at one another again until finally one of the girls had their hand hovering over one of the few spots in the body that if struck properly would kill an opponent. Hinata. That's enough. Stated the man with a stern voice that radiated power while he watched the girls turn to him. Silently the girls dropped their arms before they stepped up to the man and sat down in front of him. You both did very well, but Hanabi is still further along in the Jiken than you are Hinata. Hinata, I also know that you are afraid to hurt others and that is what is holding you back. Quickly stated the man while he looked at the girls who just nodded. Slowly the man released a sigh before he quickly performed 3 hand signs. Shortly after the room glowed a faint blue before it died and disappeared. Hinata, I know that you don't want to hurt others even if it was a practice spar, so I have asked Hokage-sama to sign you up for medical training at the hospital. Said the man while he looked at the eldest of the two girls. It wouldn't be that hard especially if I didn't have that seal on me. Whispered Hinata lightly while she glared at her right wrist. I know, but you just need to hang in there for a little bit longer. Hinata, I know what it feels like to be helpless. I also have a feeling that something is going to change very shortly. Said the man before he looked at Hinata's wrist before he could see a faint blue glow coming from it. Hinata-ni-chan, why is your wrist glowing? Asked Hanabi while she pulled at her sister's clothing. Looks like you were right father, things are going to be changing. Simply stated Hinata while she closed her eyes and held her wrist over her heart, all the while having a dark grin on her face. Shortly after the room began to shift and change once more. Once again the room was nothing but shapes that were blurring too fast to catch before they began to slow down and settle into place and take on more features. Now the room was only slightly larger than Naruto's apartment room. It had a signal clothing drawer, a bed in the center of the room with lavender sheets on the top and a small doll on the bed along with Hinata. The doll was of Naruto which caused him to look on in shock, Iruka with a small smile, and Sasuke with jealously. Silently they watched as Hinata pulled the Naruto doll close to her while releasing a silent sigh. She then turned onto her side while hugging the doll even closer to her before she sat up immediately as the sound of someone knocking her door. What? Shouted Hinata while she silently hid the Naruto doll under her pillow. Ni-chan, can I talk to you? Asked a voice through the door. Oh Hanabi, of course you can. Said Hinata as she got out of bed wearing a lavender kimono before she walked to the door and opened it. Are you okay Hinata? Asked Hanabi while she walked into the room and her sister closed the door behind her. I'm fine Hanabi-chan. I'm just finally free but at a cost. Stated Hinata with sadness while she held her wrist and sat with her sister on her bed. What was the cost Ni-chan? Asked Hanabi while she looked at her sister in concern. Well, as you already know, the Yaudam Hokage sacrificed his life to kill the Kyuubi no Kitsune, but that isn't the truth. The truth is that the Yaudam Hokage sacrificed his life to seal the Kyuubi into an orphan. The Honorable Council of the famed Hyuga clan attempted to place a mind control seal on him that would be linked to me, giving me complete control over the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Stated Hinata while she laughed lightly at the end. What happened? Asked Hanabi while she looked at her sister before she was pulled onto her lap. Well, to put it simply, it seems that the Kyuubi redesigned the seal to act like a marriage seal, meaning I'm legally married to Naruto. Squealed Hinata while she squeezed her sister. So when are you going to tell him? Is this the reason why you like him so much, and can you not squeeze me so hard? Asked Hanabi once more while she struggled against her sister's hold. Sorry, I think I'll tell him once we are both genin and Hanabi, I really care for him. He is a kind person who has endured so much, he is the true meaning of the will of fire. Said Hinata with a smile while she released her sister while Naruto just looked on sadly. Well then, I'm happy but the Honorable Hyuga Council wants to see you. Said Hanabi mimicking her sister. Well, they can wait. Said Hinata with a smile while she hugged her sister close to her and Hanabi just laughed. So do you want to talk about something specific? Asked Hanabi as she looked at her sister who was busy running her hands through Hanabi's hair. How about I tell you about the ultimate form of our Dojutsu? Suggested Hinata while she continued to run her hands through Hanabi's hair. The ultimate form? Questioned Hanabi as she looked over her shoulder. Well, not that many know about it, mostly because the council doesn't want people to know, but I learned about it from mom before she passed on. The ultimate form of the Byakugan allows us to have complete mastery over our elemental affinities. Sadly, the only way to unlock it is to have a pure soul, which many of our clan members seem to lack. Said Hinata while she began to braid Hanabi's hair. How did mom find out about it? Asked Hanabi while she messed around with a few of the completed braids. She unlocked it. Not knowing at the time what she searched the Hyuga records until she found an ancient scroll. The scroll explained how the Byakugan came into existence, but also the form she acquired. The version she unlocked never had a true name, so she called it the True Eye, trans. To Latin Japanese. Stated Hinata while she started to undid the braids and started over. How did the Byakugan come into existence? Asked Hanabi while she sat still. Well, according to the scroll that mom found, it stated that all forms of bloodlines came into existence through the help of the 9 Biju. The Nibi no Nico was stated to have created our bloodline, and for some odd reason it also mentioned that the Kyuubi no Kitsune created the Sharingan. Said Hinata in puzzlement before she set her sister next to her. Hanabi's hair was now set up with a bun with straight hair coming out of the center and 2 braids framing her face. The bun was held together with 2 senbon with 2 glass orbs on the ends that had the kanji for Fire Princess. Hinata, thank you. Whispered Hanabi with a smile while she hugged her sister. You're welcome Hanabi-chan. Whispered back Hinata while she hugged her sister back before the moment was ruined by someone knocking on her door. What? Hinata shouted, but not before pushing her sister back. Hinata-sama, the council wishes to see you immediately. I have been ordered to bring you even if it requires force. Stated the person on the other side. Give me time to at least get dressed. Stated Hinata with irritation at having her sister time interrupted by the damn council. Very well then Hinata-sama. Stated the person once more. Thank you. Answered back Hinata before she ran to her dresser. She then proceeded to open her drawers and occasionally threw an outfit to the side until she was left with one single outfit. She then ran towards the bathroom and closed the door behind her. A few moments later she stepped out wearing her outfit. Hinata was now wearing a white kimono with silver lining the edges of the sleeves and the bottom of the robe. Imprinted on the kimono was large moon on the upper half, while on the lower half was a kitsune looking up to the moon. The kimono was held in place with a blood-red sash. Well, what do you think Hanabi-chan? Asked Hinata while she did a small twirl. You're going to knock those council members down a few pegs Hinata. Said Hanabi with a smile while she hugged her sister for luck. I'll see you later Hanabi-chan. Whispered Hinata before she walked to the door and opened it, causing the room to begin to rapidly change into blurring shapes once more. Slowly the room began to settle several shapes before it finally settled down into a room larger than Hinata's and Naruto's room combined. In the room was a half-circle table that had 5 people seated in it. The man from the fights was sitting in the center while to his left were 2 elder females and to his right were 2 elder males. The first elder male looked to be at least 50 to 60 years old, had no hair except for an occasional thin white strand, and had pure white eyes that were milked over. He was wearing a white robe with a kanji for council on the back. The first elder female also looked to be at least 50 to 60 years old, had hair that was extremely white held together in a bun, and her eyes were still white but held nothing but coldness, but if one were to look long enough, they would see deep kindness. She was wearing a white robe with the kanji for council on the back. The second elder male looked to be 70, had absolutely no hair showing that he had liver spots, and had wide eyes that were filled with coldness. He was wearing a white robe with the kanji for council on the back. The second female elder also looked to be 70 years old, had no hair, and her eyes were a pure white that were milked over. She was wearing a white robe with the kanji for council on the back. Currently the council was waiting silently for Hinata, and luckily they didn't have to wait long for the council chamber doors to open. With quick and equally spaced steps the person who opened the door walked into the room before she took a seat in front of all the council members. 3 out of the 5 council members looked at her with disinterest, while 2 others looked at her with approval in their eyes, only being covered by a thin layer of disinterest. "Hinata Hyuga, do you know why you have been called before the Hyuga Council?" asked the oldest male member while he stared at her with minor interest. "No," was all Hinata said, but it was filled with a coldness that could only be matched by her late mother's, causing a few of the council members to sweat lightly. "Very well then Hinata, it has come to our attention that you may not be the best candidate to become the clan heir. Therefore you will be branded by the cage bird seal tomorrow afternoon," stated the eldest female council member. "And who might I ask gave you those orders?" "I thought that the clan heir wouldn't be chosen until both my sister and I became ninja," coldly stated Hinata while her eyes were filled with a fire. "That is the normal procedure, but since you will become a ninja 3 years sooner than your sister, the council has decided to make her clan heir," stated the second eldest male while he looked at Hinata with hate. "So you're going to betray 1,000 years of our culture, all because I'm going to become a ninja sooner than my younger sister?" asked Hinata with venom dripping off of every word while a dark aura surrounded her, causing a few council members to gulp in fear. "Don't think of it as betrayal of our clan ways, just think of it as a precaution, so if you die and fall into enemy hands, they won't have the Byakugan," quickly stated the eldest female council member in hopes of calming down Hinata. "Oh, and I guess that makes it okay for what you attempted to do to Naruto, alright?" asked Hinata with a cold exterior, but inside she was bristling with rage. "Listen here you little brat, the Kyuubi show started," the eldest male council member, before he felt something strike through his heart. Slowly he looked down to see that he was bleeding, staining his robes red with his own blood, before he fell face first onto the table dead. "If anyone ever speaks about my fiancé like that ever again, they will get a one-way ticket to death. Got that?" asked Hinata while growling in disgust. "Oh of course hi Hinata," stuttered out everyone before she got up and left the room. Not long after that the room changed back into Naruto's apartment with everyone in the same position they had left it in, only now there was food in front of everyone. "Why don't we take a break and eat something?" suggested Naruto as he grabbed a plate of chicken. "Okay," said everyone while they each took some sort of meat and ate in silence. 5 minutes later, "Dang, I never knew how good of a cook Naruto was until now," thought everyone while they rubbed their stomachs in contentment. "Hinata, what you said back in your memory, was it true?" asked Naruto in doubt while he looked at the ground. "Yes, it was Naruto, the council really did try to make it so you would only serve me, but as you can see it backfired," stated Hinata with happiness. "Thank you," whispered Naruto with a small smile before he turned to Natsuki. "Okay, yes, I did mess around with the seal they attempted to place on you, but can you really blame me?" asked Natsuki with a childish voice which caused Naruto to smile lightly once more. "No, I can't," said Naruto before he turned back to everyone else. "It's your turn, Sasuke," said Hinata while she smiled at her longtime friend, even if their fathers disapproved. "Okay. Jinjutsu art. Memory viewing," quickly stated Sasuke while performing the hand signs before the room changed into an alleyway. The alleyway was covered in complete darkness, with only an occasional light lighting the way through the alley. Shortly after, a figure could be seen walking through the alleyway beaming with happiness. The figure was a girl that stood 3'2", had black hair with blue streaks running along the edges and stopped at his neck, and black eyes. He was wearing a blue shirt with the Uchiha symbol on it, white shorts, and blue ninja sandals. "I can't believe I finally did it. I finally told everyone back at school that I'm a girl, although that brings on a whole new set of problems. The positives were I got my fangirls to leave me alone, and 2 Naruto finally kissed me, even though it was accidental. Bad news, some of my fangirls are lesbians," stated the female as she jumped with joy and ran all the way through the alley without much thought. Silently she walked through several other alleyways before she finally stepped onto a main road and took off running. She didn't get very far before the smell of blood assaulted her nose, causing her to look at the source only to stop. Laying on the ground were 2 people, both were elderly. Grandpa," said the girl as she approached their forms and turned them over only to step back in shock. Both of their faces were horribly burned, as were the rest of the front of their bodies. There were also stab wounds on the 8 vital spots for the human body, and their eyes were ripped from the sockets. No, whispered Sasuke while she held her hands up to her mouth before a scream echoed through the empty street, causing her to look up in shock. "At my family's house direction," quickly stated Sasuke before she took off towards her family home. Silently she ran, using all her emotions as fuel to get her home as fast as she could. Along her way she jumped and dodged other bodies of fallen police, ninja, and civilian family members before she stopped in front of her family home. Quickly she took in a deep breath before she released it and ran inside and towards her parents' room. The second she reached her parents' room door, she stopped before she kicked the door open, causing it to fly directly at a figure who had its back turned while it walked towards a female. A moment later the door slammed into the man, causing him to fall to the ground. The female that was saved stood 5'2", had black hair and light black eyes that shone with happiness. She was wearing a light purple top with a white undershirt, blue pants that hugged her body, and wooden sandals. "Mom," whispered Sasuke in disbelief, causing her mother to look up to her. Sasuke quickly whispered her mom before she ran towards her daughter and embraced her in a hug. "Mom, what happened?" asked Sasuke as she detached herself from her mother. "It was Itachi, he went mad and started to slaughter the clan," said her mom while she looked at the knocked out figure. "No, Itachi would never do that." "I know he wouldn't," said Sasuke as she pushed her mom back at arm's length. "Dear, you don't know what Itachi can do because of your idiot of a father turning him completely emotionless," said her mother while she bent down to her daughter's eyes and placed her right hand on her daughter's head. "You're wrong. I mean, you're wrong about Itachi, but oddly enough I can't say the same for Dad," said Sasuke while she looked at the downed figure before she looked on in shock as the figure got up and turned towards them. The only major detail that could be seen about the man was he had two glowing blood-red eyes with a three-pronged shuriken in the center. Out of reaction, Sasuke shut her eyes in hopes of blocking out the essence of fear they produced. A few seconds later she could feel something warm land on her face. Slowly she opened her eyes only to look on in shock. Standing there in front of her was her older brother with a sword sticking out of his chest. "Itachi," whispered Sasuke in shock, causing her mother to turn around and also look on in shock. Not a second later Itachi pulled himself off of the sword and pulled a kuni out before he turned on his heel and stabbed it through the right eye of the figure behind him. He then proceeded to twist the kuni deeper into the eye socket before he pulled it out with the eye attached. Afterwards he jumped back while holding his wound and preformed a single hand sign before two more of him appeared. With synchronized movements all of the Idachises preformed three hand signs. Panton. Grand Fireball Jutsu. Quickly stated all of the Idachises as three fireballs the size of a small house flew towards the unknown figure that held a hand over his missing eye where blood could be seen flowing out. All the figure could do was cover itself as all the fireballs collided when they reached the figure, causing a semi-large explosion that shook the house. "Is he gone?" asked Sasuke as she looked at where the figure once stood was now nothing but a crater. "I think so," said Itachi as he breathed in the ash-filled air before he collapsed onto his back. "Itachi!" shouted both Sasuke and his mother before they ran to his side and quickly removed his cloak and armor. As they removed each piece of clothing they were able to see that the blade had cut through Itachi's armor without any trouble. "It's too late. Sasuke, look after Naruto Uzumaki. He is a key to our know your future." "Mother, I'm sorry I couldn't get here fast enough," huffed out Itachi as he looked at them both. "No, don't be sorry, you did what you could, don't blame yourself. If I had stood up to your father you wouldn't be like this," whispered their mother before she hugged him lightly before she released him. "I don't think you'll have to worry about me, Itachi Nai-san. I already care for Naruto, but then again maybe it's love I feel for him," said Sasuke as she hugged her brother one last time and he hugged her back. "Good, and Sasuke, you're strong in your own way and you were strong tonight," said Itachi with his last breath and a smile on his face before he died. "Thank you, Itachi," whispered Sasuke under her breath while she cried. Not a moment later her mother was joining her for the loss of Itachi and the rest of their clan. After that the room began to change rather quickly and once again settled back to Naruto's apartment room. "That's everything I wanted to show you," said Sasuke before she started to hear growling coming from Itsuki. "Itsuki, is something wrong?" asked Hinata while she placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll tell you what's wrong. The person who slaughtered you clan was also the same man to force me into attacking the village," growled out Natsuki before she felt something soft wrap around her waist, making her feel calm and at ease. "What was his name?" asked Iruka as his inquisitive side came out. "His name was Madara Uchiha, but his original name was Madara Hyuga. He was the first Hyuga to ever receive the Cage Bird seal and because of this he sought out Kyuubi. He found her and asked her for a bloodline that could rival if not surpass the Byakugan," said Naruto with cold hatred for the man. "Then why hasn't anyone gone after him?" asked Sasuke as she stood up in defiance before they heard the door knock. "I'll get it," said Naruto as he stood up while he unwrapped his tail from around Natsuki. Calmly he approached the door and opened it with some of the locks still attached before they could physically see him relax and open the door, completely allowing two men in. The first man stood 6'1", had a white beard on his chin, and an old face that radiated with happiness. The man was wearing a white robe with a red line running down the center of the robe, and a square hat that had a single red triangle with a white kanji for fire. The second man stood 6, had storm gray hair that stood up in spikes, a lazy posture, one black eye, while the other was covered by his height and looked to be 30 years old. He wore a long blue sleeve shirt with a patch showing a flame on his left shoulder, blue pants with a kuni and shuriken pouch on his right leg, a green Jinin vest, white medical tape wrapped around his legs, and blue ninja sandals. Hokage-sama. Quickly stated both Sasuke and Hinata as they rose to their feet in a hurry, only to fall on top of one another. Now I'm only your Hokage so long as I'm in my office right now, though I'm just an old man coming to check on his somewhat adoptive grandson and his genin team. Stated the Hokage while he laughed at how the girls reacted. It's nice to see you again Hokage-sama. Stated Natsuki with a smile. It is always a pleasure to see you Natsuki. I take it that Naruto showed his teammates so of his past. Said the Hokage with a knowing twinkle in his eyes. Yes I did Hokage-jiji, I'm also planning on dropping half of my mask as well. Stated Naruto while he looked at his adoptive grandfather. Which half? Was all the Hokage asked as he looked at Naruto. The emotionless half. I'll still hide the fact that I'm the new Kyuubi from the general public, but my teammates deserve to know. Was Naruto's reply while he looked at his teammates who just smiled back at him. Very well then I will now leave you in the care of your Jinin sensei. Said the Hokage as he pulled out a pipe and lit it before leaving the small apartment. Well I guess I'll start. For starters my name is Kakashi Haddock, my likes are no of your concern just like my dislikes, my hobbies are well, I guess I don't have any, and my dreams for the future well you'll find out about those in later years. Said Kakashi as he smiled at his team. So all we learned was his name. Mentally stated all the genin while they sweat dropped at the absurdity of their sensei. Okay Sunspot you're next. Said Kakashi while he pointed at Naruto who just growled in annoyance. Fine my name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, my likes are training and spending time with Natsuki and hopefully with my teammates, I dislike a good portion of the village for how they treated me, my hobbies are thinking of new jutsu and ways to scare the villagers and my dream for the future, I guess it's just to have a family. Said Naruto quietly. Okay you're next Midnight. Said Kakashi once more only this time he pointed at Hinata who just glared at him. Okay my name is Hinata Hyuga, my likes are Naruto, spending time with Sasuke, flower pressing, cooking, and eating zenzai and cinnamon rolls. I dislike the cage bird seal and most of this village after what they did to Naruto. My hobbies are studying and practicing my family's fighting style the gentle fist and medicine. My dream for the future is well I want to keep that personal. Said Hinata while she looked at Naruto at the end with lust. Okay and now you duckhead. Said Kakashi as he pointed at Sasuke this time causing her to growl in annoyance. My name is Sasuke Uchiha, my likes are Naruto, spending time with Hinata and my mom, and practicing my taijutsu, jinjutsu, and basic jutsu. I dislike the person who killed my family and most of the village after seeing what they have done to Naruto. My hobbies are bettering myself so one day I can kill the man who killed my family. My dream is to one day revive my clan with the one person I care for. Said Sasuke while she blushed at the end and looked away from Naruto. Well seeing as I may end up coming on missions with you, I might as well tell you a bit about me. For starters my name is Natsuki, my likes are Dango, Naruto, and my younger sister. I dislike Madara Uchiha for causing me to attack the village. My hobbies are reading romance novels. As for my dream well I just want to find my sister and hopefully one day have a family. Said Kyuubi while she hugged Naruto. Okay so I have two girls who are lusting after sensei's son, my sensei's son who may be emotionally broken, and a demon who is also lusting after my sensei's son. I really got the short end of the stick this time. Thought Kakashi while sat there debating on what to do. Good. Now then tomorrow I want all of you to meet me at training ground 7 for a survival exercise. Said Kakashi while he watched the genin's faces drop slightly. Survival exercise, but aren't we already genin? Asked Hinata in confusion while she looked at Kakashi. No you aren't in fact the academy tests were designed to weed out the weak-willed. So tomorrow you will meet me at training ground 7. Said Kakashi as he leaned against a wall while he smiled at them. Tomorrow is going to be fun. Thought all of the soon-to-be genin with evil little smiles on their faces causing Kakashi to physically shiver in fear. Oh and before I forget don't eat breakfast. Said Kakashi with killing intent before he attempted to get off the wall only to find himself stuck. Naruto why am I stuck to your wall? Asked Kakashi while he tried to push off the wall with his feet only to have them become stuck as well. Oh that's easy all my walls are covered with non-drying glue that will only dry once contact is made with it. Although that was more of an accident. Said Naruto with a smile which caused Kakashi's eye to widen in shock while everyone else laughed at his predicament. Naruto how exactly is this an accident? Asked Kakashi while he kept reminding himself that this was his sensei's son. Well, I used to pull a lot of pranks. One day I had decided to see if I could make glue bombs. That wall is where I tested them," said Naruto as he looked at the ceiling, nearly losing himself in his memories before he was brought back to reality. "Hey Naruto, Hinata, and Itsuki, if you want you could come live with me and my mother in the Uchiha compound, we have more than enough rooms," suggested Sasuke while she watched in amusement as Kakashi attempted to free himself from the wall. "Sure, I would actually love to get out of this dump," stated Naruto as he watched with a smile as his sensei summoned a shadow clone to help him, only to have the clone end up being stuck to the wall face first. Naruto then left the room heading towards the back of the building. "And I can definitely go for getting out of the Hika compound," stated Hinata with a smile. "Well then let's go," said Sasuke as she walked out the door with Hinata behind her and shortly after Naruto following after with Natsuki, in her fox form, sitting on his head. Guys," said Kakashi only to hear his voice echo through the house. "Wait, I know how I can pass the time," said Kakashi with an eye smile while another shadow clone popped into existence. "Okay, get into our ninja pouch and get our Icha Paradise book out," said Kakashi while his clone nodded before he reached into the real Kakashi's ninja pouch, only to have his eyes widen in fear. Boss, it's not there," said the clone with fear. "But that can't be, I know I had it. I must have started," Kakashi before his lone eye widened in shock. "Oh no," whispered Kakashi while his eye widened further in shock. "I left it at home," shouted Kakashi before he screamed like a little girl, causing all of the windows to crack and his shadow clone to disappear from the sheer decibel of the scream. Currently Naruto, Hinata, Sasuke and Itsuki, who was resting on Naruto's head, walked away from his former apartment before they all stopped when a girly scream echoed through the afternoon sky. Calmly they all turned to one another before they shrugged their shoulders and continued further into the village. As they entered the main shopping district, both Hinata and Sasuke were greeted with the sight of nearly all the villagers glaring at Naruto and Natsuki. Only a few nodded to Naruto, while others just plain outright ignored them. Though despite all the glares, Naruto just brushed them off as if they were nothing more than a nuisance, while Hinata and Sasuke were trying their damn best to not kill half of the village. Luckily for the villagers, it didn't take too long for the group of genin to reach the Uchiha district, seeing as Naruto knew all the back alleys and side roads like the back of his hand. The only odd thing was the fact that Naruto was able to navigate through the Uchiha clan district and straight towards Sasuke's home. "Naruto, how did you exactly know where I lived?" asked Sasuke as she looked at Naruto with murder shining in her eyes and she looked at Akuni like it was one of her friends. 1. Your scent leads from certain areas to here. 2. Who do you think dyed Itachi's Anbu armor pink for that whole week?" stated Naruto while he backed away from the possible murderous, psychopathic, hormone-driven teenager. "Oh, so you spy on me while I'm at the onsen?" said Sasuke while the glint in her eyes became slightly brighter and flames could be seen burning behind her. No, that's Kai Kiba. It's you, just that your scent is unique," stuttered out Naruto while he reverted to his chibi fox form, which turned out to be either the best worst decision of his lifetime. "How exactly is my scent unique?" asked Sasuke while her rage resided and was replaced with the urge to hug Naruto. Well, you have the faint smell of omyasubi with a kaka and tomatoes, but your true scent is of early morning dew and freshly cut grass," stated Naruto while he laid on the ground with his eyes covered by his front paws and shook, bracing himself from the pain that would come. "Naruto, I'm not angry, I was only messing around with you. I will also admit it was funny watching Itachi Nai having to wear pink Anbu armor for that week," said Sasuke while Naruto looked at her returning to his human form. "Now come on. We still have to let my mother know that you two will now be living with us," said Sasuke as she grabbed Naruto and Hinata and literally dragged them into the house. After stepping into the house, Sasuke let them go while she removed her sandals while Naruto and Hinata did the same. "Mom, I'm home and I brought guests," shouted Sasuke while Natsuki also walked into the house before she reverted to her human form. "I'm in the kitchen," was the reply they received before they followed Sasuke into the kitchen where a woman was busy cooking. The kitchen itself was more of a combination of dining room and kitchen. The left side of the room was the kitchen and was limited in size and equipment, but even still it served its purpose for the small family. Overall it had at least 12 cabinets, a stove, sink and work area to prepare the food. The right side of the room was a small table that would fit a family of at least 6 without difficulty. On the walls were several scrolls with kanji on them. Overall the room had a comfortable atmosphere. The woman, though looked to be 37 years old, had coal black eyes, black hair with a bluish tint that reached to the middle of her back and stood 5'3". She was wearing a blue shirt with a typical Uchiha symbol on the back, a blue skirt that reached to her knees and a white apron. "So Saz-chan, who did you bring home?" asked the woman as she turned around to see Hinata, Natsuki and Naruto. Slowly her eyes widened before she had a grin pull at her lips. She then walked up to Naruto before she bent down to where she was staring into his eyes. "Hello Naruto. How have you been?" asked Sasuke's mom as she rubbed the top of his head while his face and body seemed to relax under. I've been doing well, Makoto. Although I wish Itachi was still around for me to pull pranks on. Said Naruto while Makoto let out a small laugh before she stopped rubbing his head. I know and I still remember some of the pranks you did to him. Why don't you tell some of them while I finish up dinner? Suggested Makoto while Naruto smiled before Sasuke, Hinata, Natsuki, and Naruto sat at the table. Well, let's see here, what pranks did I pull on Itachi? I remember changing his poke with cinnamon sticks and the other time where I buried his whole entire poke supply in training ground 44. Said Naruto with a smile as he remembered some of his past. I remember those. Itachi was swearing up a storm for days while muttering about trying to get you back. Although if I remember correctly he was never able to do so, since whenever he tried the plan would backfire on him. Said Makoto while everyone laughed at Itachi's expense. I remember that the last thing he ever tried was to coat me in glue and feathers, place a rubber glove on my head, and finished it off with me getting transported into the council chambers via seal. Man, that was probably the best time of my life, having a pranking war against the most static Uchiha. Said Naruto while everyone had the image of a chicken Itachi hanging upside down in the council chambers, causing everyone to break out in laughter. In heaven, afterlife, whatever you want to call it. Currently Itachi was doing one of the most dangerous sports that can ever be performed in the afterlife, peeking in on the private bathhouse of the gods. All of a sudden though, Itachi started to feel a sneeze coming on, and despite his best efforts, he was unable to hold it in before it was released, causing nearly every single scantily clothed god to chase him around the holy plain screaming, "Kill the pervert." Back with the gang. I believe that after that attempt he was forced to admit surrender to me. Since the Uchiha took that as a great blow to their respect, especially since the so-called genius got outwitted by a boy no older than 5. Said Naruto while Makoto set a plate of omisubi with a kaka and tomatoes in front of Sasuke, Zenzai in front of Hinata, a rather large bowl of ramen in front of Naruto, a plate of dango in front of Natsuki, and another plate of dango in her seat. Mom, before we begin, would it be alright if Hinata, Natsuki, and Naruto moved in with us? Asked Sasuke as she looked at her mother with the puppy dog eyes. Dear, you're a couple years too young to have the puppy dog pout work on me, but I don't see why not. I also want to know why. Said Makoto as she laughed at her daughter who pouted. If you must know, it is because they are my teammates, and quite honestly, have you seen the place that Naruto lives in? Said Sasuke while her voice rose to a shout at the end while her mother flinched at that. No, I haven't, and something tells me that I don't want to know. Now, I don't know about you, but I think it would be best if we eat now. Said Makoto while everyone nodded in agreement. I did, Akamasu. Everyone whispered under their breath before they started to eat, opting to save the conversations until everyone was done eating. Unluckily for the group, they got to witness where Naruto got his table manners. Both Natsuki and Naruto were shoveling the food into their mouths at a pace that quickly made everyone look on it disgust, horror, and for some odd reason fascination. Quickly the other three shared a look before they just shrugged their shoulders, thinking the same exact thing, if you can't beat them, join them. Immediately after, they too were shoveling the food into their mouth and finished just a few seconds after Natsuki and Naruto, although they were breathing heavily. Huff huff, how can you eat that fast, huffed out Sasuke while she placed a hand over her heavily beating heart. Had to get used to it. With me being the ultimate evil, I literally had to eat extremely fast or else get dragged away from my food before I was halfway done and would be beaten. After the beating I would told that I don't deserve food or to even live for that matter. Luckily the Ichiraku ramen stand was willing to allow me to eat there. Hell, they even helped me hide from mobs and even attempted to adopt me on several occasions. Said Naruto as he allowed himself to remember his almost adoptive family. Why weren't you ever adopted? Asked Hinata while she began to take a random guess as to who was behind it. Old man Tucci, every time he would go to get the adoption forms, the orphanage would increase their prices. If he went to the Hokage, some random council member would come in, say something like, "Hokage-sama, I'm afraid that the council had made an error in the paperwork that was needed to be signed today," before he would grab it along with the adoption papers and destroy them. It was either that or the Hokage's secretary wouldn't allow him past and even threatened him by calling Anbu. Said Naruto with rage as his eyes flashed a deep violet before he released a breath and calmed down while his eyes returned to their natural blue color. Those self-arrogant pigs. Shouted Makoto as her eyes immediately flashed from their coal black to the Sharingan red before they returned to normal. Mother. Shouted Sasuke with shock at what her mother said. Sorry dear, it's just this is the third time they have ruined Naruto-kun's life. Said Makoto with anger clearly burning in her eyes while she picked up the dirty dishes off the table and carried them over to the sink. She then proceeded to drop them in while releasing a large sigh. What do you mean that was the third time that they have ruined my life? Asked Naruto with a menacing glare directed at Makoto, causing her to squirm. The first time that they officially ruined your life was when they told your mother that you had died along with your father. During that time though Sarutobi was too busy protecting you from assassins that wanted you dead because of what you formerly contained, so he never officially found out until a fake letter. I even have the false letter that they wrote, with the help of my husband, that they gave to him. He was of course smart enough to ask me to come in and check to see if it really was Kushina-chan's handwriting. I knew Kushina better, she wouldn't abandon her own flesh and blood, and noticed several differences in between her handwriting and the notes. I immediately pointed them out and told Sarutobi what my husband did. He was one of the major ones behind your mother's leaving. I have been in constant contact with your mother Naruto, and I can already tell you this much: she isn't very happy with Konoha's honorable council. It took nearly a whole month just to keep her from coming back and killing the council, and I even made her a promise that Itachi would watch over you and keep you safe. The second after you got your first C-rank mission, I'm also going to send a message to her so she can meet you in person," stated Mikoto while she watched Naruto's emotions change from anger to happiness to fear and finally rage, while he released a concentrated form of killing intent that actually took a form of a fox standing behind him with its fangs bared. "Calm yourself, Naruto. Besides, if you kill the council members we would miss their faces when we bring your mother back. Just imagine it with her back, not only would you get a form of revenge against those fools on the council, but you will truly have a piece of your family back. Plus if we're lucky we'll get to see her kill a few of the more problematic ones," said Natsuki as she lightly rubbed his back, calming him down enough to where the killing intent had dissipated. "You're right, Natsuki. Mikoto, can you at least tell me how you have been keeping in contact with my mother?" asked Naruto with his voice filled with hidden glee, while Natsuki continued to rub his back before Sasuke and Hinata joined in, causing him to fall further in relaxation. "We have a special summon that we can call out. Although what it is I can't tell you until you meet your sensei. It is in Uzumaki clan summoning scroll. I was given special permission from the head summon since Kushina and I plan to have her firstborn marry my secondborn," stated Mikoto with a smile and mild blush, completely ignoring Naruto's extremely pale face and Natsuki's, Hinata's, and Sasuke's looks of jealousy. "He's mine," all the girls shouted while they tugged him closer to each of them, causing Mikoto to snap out of her mental dreams. "I've been placed into a clan marriage with him," shouted Sasuke as she pulled Naruto to her while she gave him a light kiss on the cheek, causing him to turn a light red color. "So what, I've been bound to him ever since the idiots on my family council branded us together and thanks to Kyuubi's intervention, turned it into a marriage seal. Don't forget I've also been the only one to really love him," shouted Hinata as she pulled Naruto close to her so his head was resting on her chest, causing him to turn a deeper red before it turned slightly deeper as Hinata began to lightly run her hand through his hair. "Well, guess what, you two, since the Shinigami seal binds me to Naruto-kun. So I outrank the both of you, especially since I've been with him his entire life. Besides, you never took the chance to approach him and ask him out, along with the fact that there is an old demon law that states that the old Kyuubi is required to marry the next Kyuubi," shouted out Natsuki as she pulled Naruto out of Hinata's grip before she places a kiss on his lips while she lightly rubbed his whisker marks. Shortly after she released him before she lightly began to lick his cheek, causing him to squirm. Slowly cold hard hatred boiled beneath both Hinata and Sasuke's skin before they shared a look before they jumped at Natsuki and began to fight while tossing Naruto out of the scuffle. Naruto and Mikoto of course just stared on in wonder while Hinata and Sasuke took on the Kyuubi in her human form. "Uchiha, Sasuke, Hyuga, Hinata and Yoko, Natsuki, stop fighting this instant," shouted Mikoto, causing the girls to stop in a rather interesting position. Currently Natsuki was laying on her back with Hinata in a chokehold, while Sasuke was behind her with her legs wrapped around Natsuki's neck, while her face was locked in a chokehold as well, only with Hinata's legs. Of course, shortly after all of them fell into a pile on top of one another. "Hinata and Sasuke, you both are clan heirs, so I suggest you start acting like, and as for you Natsuki, you are a demon queen. Such squabbles like these are not appropriate for you to participate in. If anything, you should know Konoha clan's laws well enough to realize that Naruto falls under the Clan Restoration Act, meaning he can have more than one wife," stated Mikoto while the girls looked at the ground in shame. Naruto on the other hand was doing his best to wrap around his mind that he would eventually have to marry more than one woman. Mikoto-san, if you don't mind, could you please show me to my room?" said Naruto, who was so pale that it would have Orochimaru green with envy. "Of course, Naruto, and don't think you three are getting out of this scotch-free either. When I get back I want this kitchen spotless," stated Mikoto as she turned back to the three lightly sighing teens before they were standing stiff as boards, shaking in fear from the killing intent being released. "Yes ma'am," quickly answered all the girls so they wouldn't have to face Mikoto's wrath. "Good. Now come along, Naruto," said Mikoto with a smile while she led Naruto out of the room. Only one thought went through everyone's head: never piss off Mikoto Uchiha ever. Silently Naruto followed Mikoto through the main house before they stopped in front of a door before Mikoto opened it up and walked in with Naruto following after. The room itself was a comfortable size, being only 8 by 8 room with the ceiling stretching 9 feet into the air. The wall in front of him had a sliding door that led out to a small meditation area where several sakura trees grew surrounding a small pond that had several koi fish swimming lazily with much care. The left wall was covered in bookshelves that were filled to the brim with books on cooking, forging, fuin, nin-gentai, and kenjutsu scrolls covered the shelves, along with a rather impressive layer of dust. Along the wall behind him were a few dressers that had a few photo frames on them that were covered in dust, while a futon lay in between the two. Finally, the right wall had a single door that undoubtedly led to his personal bathroom, while on the wall were 2 scrolls with the word tiger on the first, while on the second was the word hunter. Slowly Naruto walked over to the dresser before he picked up one of the photo frames before he wiped off the dust. After wiping the dust off, a pair of violet eyes stared back at his own sapphire blue ones. Immediately after, he dropped the picture in shock while he backed up slightly. "Naruto, are you alright?" asked Mikoto as watched Naruto. "Yeah, I'm fine. It must have been a trick of the moon's light," said Naruto as he retrieved the picture and actually looked at it. In the picture were 2 people. The first was a male that stood 5'8", looked to be about 20 years old, had golden blonde hair that reached to his neck, while 2 bangs framed his face, and sapphire blue eyes. He was wearing a dark blue long sleeve shirt that had a red spiral on each shoulder, dark blue pants, and blue ninja sandals. Standing next to him was a woman who stood 5'4", looked to be at least 20 years old, had fire red hair that reached to her waist, and violet eyes. She was wearing a light blue sleeveless shirt, blue pants, and blue ninja sandals. Currently, the man had his left arm wrapped lightly around the woman's shoulder while she leaned into him, cradling her stomach. Both of them had bright smiles on for the photo, but even still Naruto could tell that those were their true smiles. "Mikoto-san, can you please leave me be for the rest of the night and tell the rest of the girls that I don't want to be disturbed?" asked Naruto as he reset the picture on the dresser before turning to face Mikoto, only to see that she was gone. Slowly he turned back to the picture with only one thought on his mind. "I have to get a C rank and fast," thought Naruto while he pulled out one of his sealing scrolls before he had to cover his nose. "But a shower first," said Naruto as he grabbed his scroll that contained his clothes and entered the bathroom. But the girls, currently all the girls were busy rinsing, washing, and drying all the dishes used after they had finished cleaning the table and wiped it down. "Man, I can't believe that we just got into an argument over a guy," stated Sasuke as she rinsed off the dishes before she passed them on to Hinata. "I know, I never thought there would be a day that it would happen. Why don't we make a promise to one another? No matter who Naruto chooses and who gets to claim him first in bed, that we'll still be friends," said Hinata to Sasuke, who started to ponder over it before she nodded her head in a positive manner. "It seems that you forgot something though. Naruto needs to marry at least 4 women or else the Honorable Council of Konoha will choose his wives. I can already tell you they will choose girls that are under their control like that Waruno bitch to marry him. I can already tell you this much: Naruto has had his eyes on the both of you ever since the first day of the academy. So don't be too surprised if he chooses one if not both of you to be one of his wives," said Natsuki while she spit the word honorable out with so much venom that it nearly melted through the pants she was drying. "What do you mean he has had his eyes on the 2 of us since the first day at the academy?" asked Hinata as she looked at Natsuki out of the corner of her eye. "On the first day of school you 2 were the only ones to ever approach him and talk to him. Hinata, you offered him some of your own lunch during lunch, and Sasuke, you were willing to push him to do better than his own limitations. Plus he also knew that you were a girl helps," said Natsuki with a smirk on her face while Sasuke's mouth hung open lightly. "Oh, how did he know?" asked Sasuke as she paused in her work. "It's your smell. All females, including demon women, constantly release pheromones once they hit puberty. The only difference in between male pheromones and female pheromones is their scent and the time that they are released. During a female's period or heat, as we demons call it, we are constantly releasing pheromones to attract a strong male. Once a male usually smells the pheromones, they will begin to release their own in attempts to beckon the female to mate with them. Although the release of a male's pheromones is completely psychological, so to put it in simpler terms, a male's mind releases them upon smelling a female in heat. At the first day of school, Sasuke, you were going through your first period and were unknowingly releasing pheromones, and Naruto caught a whiff. Luckily for you, I had trained Naruto enough by then to the point that I can even release a minuscule amount of my own pheromones. If I hadn't, well, let's just say you wouldn't be human, and Iruka would have been nearly cleaved in half for trying to stop Naruto," said Natsuki while both Hinata and Sasuke blushed a deep crimson, causing Natsuki to laugh lightly while Mikoto walked back into the room. "You know, I could have sworn that when I left I told you 3 that I wanted this room to be spotless," said Mikoto with her voice filled with anger, causing all 3 girls to freeze and turn around slowly so they were facing Mikoto. Silently Mikoto continued to glare at the 3 of them, causing them to squirm underneath her gaze. "Go get some sleep, I'll take care of whatever remains," said Mikoto as she released a sigh while the girls quickly disappeared. After they had disappeared, did Makoto look over what they had done only to see stacks of completely clean dishes standing at attention. I guess they did an okay job. Thought Makoto as she started to place away the dishes before she stopped and did a double take at the pan she was holding. Right dead center in the pan was a hole. Faintly Makoto could feel her eye begin to twitch before she sighed and tossed it out the window and heard a clang while she smirked. That'll teach that little pervert, and if it doesn't, started thinking Makoto while dark evil things began to float into her mind, along with a dark low chuckle from deep within her mind. But Naruto. Calmly Naruto walked out of the bathroom wearing a simple light blue kimono on before he walked out to the small garden. He then released a sigh while he looked up into the night sky and stared at the moon, before he sat in a meditation position and closed his eyes, allowing the moon's light to cover him. What am I going to do? I already know that I fall under the clan restoration law, meaning I can have several wives if I wished it. I know that I'll need at least 4 unless I want the council to pick them, and that is a disaster waiting to happen. I also know I have feelings for both Hinata and Sasuke, but I don't know if it's love, it may just be a simple crush, but they also understand me. Hinata had a seal placed on her without her choice just like me, and Sasuke has lost just about everything except for her mother, plus we are the last of our clans. Then there's Natsuki, she is a demon queen who has fallen for me, even if she tries to hide it, but I can clearly see it in her eyes. I just don't know. Am I not making a move because I'm afraid to lose everything again? Is it because somewhere in my heart I know that Mitsumi is still alive, or is it because I'm worried about what Mitsumi would think of me? God, this is so frustrating and troublesome. Thought Naruto as he evened out his breath. Plus today was taxing on my mind too. Showing one of my worst memories to not only my teammates, Iruka, and myself has taken its toll, but even still I feel as if I'm forgetting to do something. Thought Naruto once more before he reopened his eyes and stretched. Back at Naruto's old home, currently Kakashi was still stuck to the wall breathing heavily since he screamed his throat raw, hoping to attract someone to help him. Although it seems that Kami had some form of grudge against him since no one ever entered after his team left. Slowly a sigh left his lips before he heard the sound of a floorboard squeaking. Acting quickly, Kakashi attempted to grab a kunai only to curse under his breath as he remembered that he was stuck to a wall. Instead he quickly scanned the room and couldn't notice anything different and allowed his body to relax before he heard it again only from his left. Quickly Kakashi turned towards the noise only to catch sight of a piece of clothing as it disappeared. Ninjutsu? Thought Kakashi as he allowed for his mind to calm down and felt for his chakra. The second he was able to feel his chakra, he immediately released a small, short concentrated burst, causing the room to waver slightly before it shattered, revealing woman standing before Kakashi. The female standing before him stood 5'10", looked to be at least 30 years old, had short dark brown hair, light brown eyes, and wore her headband around her forehead. She was currently wearing a light earth brown kimono top that hugged her body, lightly showing that she was at least a C-cup, black ninja pants with a kunai and shuriken holder on her left leg, and black ninja sandals. On her cheeks she had purple triangles that faced downward similar to fangs and large canines. Impossible, Rin? Asked Kakashi in shock while he rapidly blinked his eyes thinking that it wasn't real. Hello Kakashi. Said Rin as she approached him before she lightly placed her hand on the side of his face. But you're dead, I saw you die. Shouted Kakashi in hysteria while tears freely fell from his single eye. Kakashi, so long as I love you I'll cheat death to be with you. Said Rin lightly while she began to pull down his face mask so that his lower portion of his face was revealed along with his collarbone. Denkai bai Zatsuki Maion Tenshi. Whispered Rin while her canines lengthened while she kissed Kakashi on the lips before she transferred her mouth over his collarbone. Not wasting a single second she swiftly bit down while she transferred chakra into the wound. After a few seconds she removed her mouth with a thin line of saliva, linking her bite to her mouth before she replaced Kakashi's face mask. We'll be together soon my love. Whispered Rin while she smiled softly at Kakashi's peaceful expression before she disappeared in a whirlwind of leaves and Kakashi fell to the floor still dead asleep. Back with Naruto. Well, nothing is coming to mind so it must have been my imagination. Said Naruto as he re-entered the room and took notice of Natsuki already laying in bed asleep. Some things never change. Thought Naruto with a small smile before he also got into bed. The second he was in bed Natsuki immediately snuggled up close to him allowing for his head to rest on her chest. Good night Natsuki-chan. Whispered Naruto as he fell into a deep and dreamless sleep. The next day, with painfully slow movements the sun ascended into the early morning sky, allowing for it to shine onto the world, or more precisely directly onto one person's face. Slowly the person groaned in complaint before he turned and pressed his face further into his pillow, causing it to giggle lightly. Wait a second, pillows don't giggle. Thought Naruto as he reluctantly opened his eyes only to have to shut them before he squinted and made out a shadow hanging over him. Ugh Natsuki, what are you doing? Asked Naruto as he rubbed the sleep out of his eyes and tried to get up only to be pushed down lightly by the figure over him. Go back to sleep Naruto-kun. Lightly whispered a voice right next to him, causing his eyes to widen in horror. Acting on impulse, Naruto immediately pulled a kunai out from his kimono and make a quick swipe for the figure's throat, only to have it disappear. "Ugh, Naruto," whined out Natsuki as she looked at him only to see him in minor shock. "Naruto?" asked Natsuki in worry, causing Naruto to look at her. "Don't worry, it was nothing. It was possibly a ghost from my mind," said Naruto while he replaced the kunai into his kimono before he stood up. "A ghost from your mind?" questioned Natsuki as she lazily sat up, allowing the blanket that covered them to fall to the ground, showing once again that she wasn't wearing any clothes. "Yeah. It was a shadowed figure. Maybe it was a remnant of an attack I suffered that I mentally buried into my subconscious, and that yesterday's revelation of my past dug it up. My mind might have then recreated what I last saw as an illusion. Now can you please put some clothes on?" asked Naruto at the end while he grabbed his clothes and headed off towards the bathroom with Natsuki following after. "Naruto, you know that clothing is uncomfortable against my skin. Besides, no one can say anything so long as I'm not out in public like this," retorted Natsuki while she locked the bathroom door behind her and looked around. The bathroom was relatively modest, being only 3/4 of the size of the bedroom next door. Along the left wall were 2 sinks with cabinets underneath them, a medicine cabinet above them, and enough room in between the 2 sinks for all the basic healthcare necessities. The right wall had 2 short wooden walls that were an even 3 feet apart from one another and held 2 showers and a single toilet. Along the south wall were several cabinets that contained only Kami knows what. In the center of the room was a large square indent in the stone that held spring water. Surrounding the small spring were several seals that ran along the spring's edge. Even from the distance that they stood, Natsuki was able to tell that most of the seals were designed to clean the spring after every use, control the temperature of the water, regulate how quickly the water heated, keep the water at a constant level so it would never overflow or be underfilled, and a few contained wash clothes along with some soap. "It makes no difference, especially with perverts like Kiba and old man Hokage out there," said Naruto while he removed his kimono while he walked over to the spring and tapped a few of the seals, causing them to glow a faint blue. Not a moment later, the spring slowly began to heat up while steam gently rose up from the surface just as Naruto stepped in. He then proceeded to walk towards the farther end before he slowly relaxed into the water and sat on a stone outcropping that was under the water and allowing the water to rise up to his chest. Slowly he closed his eyes before he opened them a bit, only to see Natsuki still standing in the same place. "Are you going to join me or stand there all day like a fish out of water?" asked Naruto, which caused Natsuki to turn her attention towards Naruto. Slowly a grin spread across her face, causing Naruto to look at her questioningly, only to brush it off as a girl thing. "Of course I'll be joining you. Besides, I can't have you drown yourself," said Natsuki with a smirk while Naruto just shook his head at her lame joke. "Ugh, women," whispered Naruto while Natsuki joined him in the spring and hit him for his earlier comment. She then proceeded to sit beside him while she relaxed into the water and released a groan of contentment as the warm water loosened up her muscles. "Natsuki, can you train Sasuke in how to properly use the Sharingan?" asked Naruto while he relaxed, allowing the water to work its magic and loosening up his muscles. "I don't see why not, but she won't be able to use it to the full potential unless she's a Hanyu or a full demon," stated Natsuki while Naruto nodded in response before he placed his hands over a seal. He then channeled a small amount of chakra into the seal before a rag and a bar of soap popped out. "I know, and since she isn't a demon, she won't be able to use the true Manjikyu Sharingan to the true potential without going blind," said Naruto while he lightly wetted the soap before he lightly rubbed the soap into the towel. "But you could change that," retorted Natsuki while she grabbed the soap-covered towel before she turned Naruto around and began to wash his back. "I know, but what if she doesn't like being a demon? Once you become one or a mate to one, there is no turning back," said Naruto while Natsuki continued to wash his back and occasionally added in a light tap on some of his muscles, allowing them to unknot themselves. "Naruto, if you're so worried about her decision, why not ask her and explain the positives and negatives of becoming a demon to her and Hinata? That way they understand what they are getting into," said Natsuki as she finished washing his back before she turned him around, handed him the cloth, and turned around herself. "Very well, you hold 2 valuable points and I'll talk to them about it later today. If they agree, I'll mark them, if not, I'll just let them live out their lives naturally," said Naruto while he washed Natsuki's back and occasionally struck a muscle knot similar to how Natsuki did to him to loosen it and lightly rub it away. "Good. I also suggest testing their elemental affinity, since I have this feeling in my gut that Kakashi won't train all of you evenly. If anything, he may show favoritism to you and Sasuke since you two are related to someone from his past," said Natsuki as she relaxed even further into Naruto as he finished washing her back. Silently they sat there content with one another before a knock on the bathroom door ruined the moment. "Coming," shouted Tsukyun as he removed Natsuki from him and set her down next to him before he got up. He then proceeded to walk towards the door while he replaced the kimono that he was wearing earlier back on and wrapped it around his body like a robe. After making certain that it wouldn't fall off his body, he unlocked the door. Standing on the other side of the door were both Sasuke and Hinata wearing kimonos while holding a towel in their arms. Hinata's kimono was a light purple color with a white moon on the center. Sitting inside the moon was the image of a wolf with red tattoos covering its left side of its face, while a single tail wrapped around the base of the moon. Surrounding the moon were several kanji that mentioned all the demon clans and summoning clans. Sasuke's kimono was a dark blue color with a black sun on the front, while the Uchiha symbol was imprinted on the back. Encircling the moon was a black dragon that was eating its own tail as it guarded the moon. Written into the dragon's skin was the kanji for life, death, and slumber. "Sasuke, Hinata, how may I help you?" asked Naruto while the girls silently looked away with blushes adorning their faces. "We were kind of wondering if you would allow us to join you in cleaning up," said Sasuke while both Hinata's and her blush grew a little darker and Naruto had a blush adorning his face. Thus started Naruto before Natsuki appeared behind. "Of course you can join us. Besides, Naruto has a question for the both of you," said Natsuki with a minor smile while she pulled Naruto out of the doorway and grabbed both girls before pulling them in as well. Shortly after, the door was shut and locked once more, only this time it also had a demon seal on the door, so it could only be opened from the outside. Not even a moment after sealing the door, Natsuki immediately stripped Naruto of his kimono before she dragged Naruto with her towards the spring and tossed him in. She then proceeded to follow after while Naruto resurfaced with his hair hanging in his face. After getting in, she grabbed Naruto by his hair and dragged him over to the ledge he occupied earlier before sitting him down there and sitting next to him while resting her head against his shoulder. Lazily, Natsuki opened her eyes and looked over to the girls who were doing their best to hide their blushes. "Don't just stand there. Either you can get in willingly or I'll do the same thing that I did to Naruto to the two of you," said Natsuki with irritancy, causing the two to look on in minor shock. Acting quickly unless they wanted the wrath of Natsuki after them, they quickly stripped of their kimonos and allowed for them to pool on the ground around them. Naruto of course had a much deeper blush on his face before he looked into the water, while the girls covered their bodies with their arms and walked into the spring and sat close to Naruto but still kept a fair distance away from him. "So Naruto, what did you want to talk to us about?" asked Hinata as she looked away from Naruto with a blush still adorning her face. "Yeah, I do. All I ask is that you let me explain everything before you make any protests or ask any questions," asked Naruto while he looked at the girls after finally getting his blush under control. "Of course. You have our word as ninja and clan heirs," said both girls while the motion for him to begin. "I was wondering if you would consider becoming Hanyuses. I can already tell you that this would have several benefits for the both of you. Becoming a Hanyu will give you extra flexibility, larger chakra pools, demonic chakra, increased life, and you wouldn't be able to age after reaching 20. The bad things are, for starters, you would be considered an outcast in both the human world and the demon world, the extreme love of killing and spilling blood and heat. Sasuke, there is an extra positive for this though. If you were to ever be able to achieve the Manjikyu Sharingan, it would deteriorate until you were left blind, but if you became a half-demon, the Manjikyu would never deteriorate. This may also have an effect on you, Hinata, for all I know, and what Natsuki knows, the extra demonic chakra may increase the power of your Byakugan and the ultimate form as well to an unknown degree," said Naruto as he took a minor breather while the two girls looked at one another. "Naruto, if you turn us into Hanyuses, will we get extra features and will this officially consider us mates in demonic terms?" asked Sasuke while curiosity and Hinata nodding in agreement. "Well, to answer your first question, yes, you will gain fox ears, tails, and claws. The demonic chakra may also slightly enhance your metabolism, which would cause you to grow slightly. As for your second question, yes, you will be considered mates in demonic terms, but you won't be officially recognized as mates until you each birth a child," said Natsuki calmly, since she had been prepared by her mother to officially take on a mate at some point in her life. "We agree," stated both the girls after a few moments, causing Naruto to look at them in confusion and shock. "What?" shouted Naruto while the girls giggled at his antics. "We said that we agree. We see nothing wrong with what you're saying, besides all the positives outweigh the negatives. Sure, we'll be considered outcasts, but then isn't everyone considered an outcast?" stated the girls without any hesitation while wearing grins of happiness. "I guess you're right, but you won't become Hanyuses, you'll become full-blooded demons. Meaning certain emotions will be far easier to trigger, such as anger, jealousy, lust, envy, and pride, but if this is what you want, I won't argue. I already know that I'll lose," said Naruto with a small smile on his face, which caused everyone to break out with a smile of their own. "So how exactly will we be changed?" asked Sasuke while Hinata also paid very close attention to what was to be mentioned. "Becoming a Hanyu is different from becoming a demon. To become a Hanyu, a demon's blood needs to be injected directly into the bloodstream of a human. The only way to turn a human into a demon is to have them drink the blood of a demon, and then they have to be marked by the same demon," said Naruto without hesitation while the girls turned slightly pale but swallowed their disgust and fear. "I'll go first," offered up Hinata as she stood up, allowing for the water that hung on her body float down. She then walked over to Naruto before she sat on his lap and held his head in her hands and stared into his endless sapphire blue eyes. Swallowing heavily, Naruto lightly cupped Hinata's face in his own hands before he pulled her face closer to his. Quickly stealing his resolve, Naruto bit down on his tongue hard enough for blood to be drawn before he allowed for it to pool in his mouth. Once he had enough, he quickly kissed Hinata on the lips while he gently coaxed her into opening her mouth. Luckily, he didn't need to wait long before Hinata lightly moaned into the kiss, opening her mouth wide enough for Naruto to slip his tongue into her mouth and allow for blood to flow along his tongue into Hinata's mouth. Shortly after, all the blood was either in Hinata's mouth or in her throat as Naruto released her from the kiss with only a thin string of blood-colored saliva connecting them before he gently pushed Hinata's head back, exposing her neck to him. Acting quickly, Naruto lightly kissed Hinata on the neck while feeling her pulse increase before he swiftly bit down and channeled chakra into the bit while drinking a small amount of her blood. After a couple of seconds, he gently released her before he set her down next to him and backed away. Silently, everyone waited for a few moments before Hinata's chakra began to swirl around her and changed from its dull light blue into a vibrant white with blue streaks. Not a moment later, the chakra completely consumed her as it flared before it died a few seconds later. Now standing in front of the small group was a female, stood 4'3", looked to be still 12 years old, had midnight blue hair with a few streaks of pure white and ocean blue mixed in, and white pupilless eyes. She was of course still naked, showing that her bosom size was at least a C cup, her skin was a nearly transparent white, and her hips were a medium size. Sitting atop her head were a pair of fox ears that matched the same color scheme of her hair, while lazily floating in the water beside her was a single fox tail that was a midnight blue, while the tip was a pure white with a second tip being a light blue. Her hands no longer had nails but rather short claws, and they also assumed that it was the same for her feet as well. Imprinted on her neck was a symbol of a golden yellow nine-tailed fox with its tails wrapping around her neck. Slowly, Hinata released a low groan as she slowly stood up before she swayed on her feet and sat back down before she looked around her and her eyes landed on Naruto. "How do you feel, Hinata?" asked Naruto with concern. "I feel fine, but this headache is annoying," whined out Hinata as she rubbed her head and coincidentally her new ears causing her to get lost in own form of pleasure. "The headache is understandable since it's your mind getting used to the new advanced hearing, smell, taste, sight, and feeling," chuckled out Naruto while he gently grabbed Hinata's hands and placed them at her side. "I'm also going to tell you this now, your chakra control has shot itself straight to hell. You will have to redo all the chakra control exercises you have learned and do them for at least 6 months if you want to be able to control your chakra to the same degree that you were able to do when you were human," said Naruto once more as he let Hinata go while she pouted at the thought of redoing all her chakra control exercises. "Sasuke, are you ready?" asked Naruto as he turned towards her. "Yeah," stated Sasuke with determination as she scooted closer to Naruto and took his face into her own hands, and Naruto in turn cupped her own face. Acting on impulse, Sasuke immediately crashed her own lips onto Naruto's, causing him to open his own eyes in shock before both their bodies relaxed into the kiss. Hesitantly, Sasuke ran her tongue along the bottom of Naruto's lip, causing him to moan lightly and granting Sasuke access. With sloppy movement, Sasuke allowed for her tongue to explore Naruto's mouth before she gently coaxed him into her own mouth and allowed for him to explore. Just as he was about to pull out, Sasuke bit down onto his tongue, causing it to bleed into her and coat not only her mouth but Naruto's tongue as well. After she felt she had a significant amount of Naruto's blood, she released him with only a thin string of bloody saliva linking them. Not a second after she released him, Naruto had immediately started to assault her bare neck with light passes of his tongue before he lingered on a pulse point and bit down and channeled his demonic chakra into her while drinking a small amount of her blood. Shortly after, he gently released her before she was consumed in a deep blue flame with small red spots mixed in before it died down. Now standing before the group was a young female that was also no older than 12 years of age, had black hair with blue streaks running through it that reached to her mid-back and red tips, her eyes were coal black with a thin almost transparent red streak running through the center, and she stood 4'5", and she was also slightly more built with her muscles showing, giving her an athletic build. She was of course wearing nothing, so everyone was able to tell she had at least a C cup if not nearly a D cup bust and wide hips. Sitting atop her head were a pair of fox ears that were slightly dark blue with red tips that matched her hair. Floating behind her was a similar dark blue tail with a red tip, and her hands no longer had nails but claws that only extended out only an inch and looked to be retractable. The group also guessed the same could be for her feet. Imprinted on her neck was a symbol of a golden yellow nine-tailed fox with its tails wrapping around her neck. Sasuke started Naruto before he was stopped by a delicate claw lightly placed on top of his lips. I'm alright Naruto, unlike Hinata, I've continuously channeled chakra into some of my senses so that I was prepared to run away from the hordes of hormone-driven fangirls that I once had. Said Sasuke before she removed her finger from Naruto's lips and lightly kissed him before she released him. Not a moment after she released him he was turned around before his lips were once again assaulted, only this time by Hinata. Almost delicately Hinata gripped her hands in his hair while she made gentle passes with her tongue on his lips before he opened his mouth and Hinata inserted her tongue into his own mouth. She then proceeded to explore his mouth and at the same time was able to coax his own tongue into her mouth. The second his tongue entered her mouth Hinata allowed for him to explore her own mouth and leaned in further into the kiss when he passed over a particular spot in her mouth. Sadly the kiss had to be cut short because of a necessity called oxygen. Even as they pulled apart they were breathing heavily before tears of blood began to fall from Naruto's eyes. I don't understand. How can you love someone like me? You could have all found someone better yet you chose me. Why? Asked Naruto as tears of blood continued to fall from his eyes while both Hinata and Sasuke gently hugged him while they lightly licked away his tears. Naruto, we love you because you've had the whole village against you yet no matter what they did to you, you would ignore it and continue on with your life. Once you finally had enough you took a stand for not only for your own revenge but also for how the village would mistreat anyone who became your friend and despite what you have become you have remained humble. You don't flaunt your power like the Hyuga and Uchiha do, but you rather hide yourself and make yourself seem weak so that people would underestimate you. Even now you hide your true power and are humble, something not even the village will understand. Said both Hinata and Sasuke without hesitation while Natsuki just hugged Naruto from behind. Thank you. Whispered Naruto while his tears slowed before they finally stopped, but even still the girls wouldn't stop licking his cheeks. Girls, I've stopped crying so you don't need to continue licking my face. Said Naruto while the girls gave him one last lick before they just curled up into Naruto and rubbed their heads into his chest. You know that we have about an hour to get to the training grounds so that we can take our test against Kakashi. Said Naruto, causing the girls to look up at him lazily before they closed their eyes once more. I don't really see the big deal, after all he was late 3 hours the other day. Said Sasuke with a calm and relaxed tone. Which possibly means that he is late to everything by at least 3 hours. Stated Hinata also with a calm and relaxed tone. It doesn't matter, he is still our Jonin sensei, and think of it like this. If he is late every day by at least 3 hours we can use that time for me to help you train in using your demonic chakra. Although I think I forgot to mention something when I mentioned the changes you would undergo. Said Naruto with a thoughtful expression while the girl's eyes twinkled with joy at the thought of training with Naruto. Oh well, I guess it was nothing. Said Naruto before he was yanked out of the spring by two extremely happy girls. He was then thrown in front of the sink while the girls quickly brushed, flossed, and rinsed their mouths before they left the room in a burst of speed, completely ignoring the door and running through it. Naruto of course stood there looking the 2 holes in his door before he just hung his head in defeat and Natsuki laughed at him. What kami did I piss off to have this happen to me? Moaned out Naruto as he brushed his own teeth at a normal rate, flossed, and rinsed as well before walking through the literal hole in the wall. 5 minutes later, slowly Naruto walked towards the dining room with Natsuki beside him. Naruto was wearing a skin-tight black t-shirt with a black vest over the top, black ninja pants that were wrapped off with medical tape on the bottom, black ninja sandals, and he had 2 kunai and shuriken pouches on each leg. On the back of the vest was the typical Uzumaki spiral design, but surrounding it were 9 tails, 3 which were gold in color, while the rest were a deep crimson. He was also carrying a scroll on his back that was a deep crimson and had a golden border. Natsuki was also wearing a skin-tight shirt, only hers was a dark crimson nearly bordering on black color. On top of the shirt was a dark crimson vest, dark crimson ninja pants that were wrapped off with a crimson-colored medical tape at the bottom, crimson ninja sandals, and she had 2 senbon pouches and a sword strapped to her back. The vest had the same design as Naruto's. The sword on the other hand was resting gently against her back with the help of chakra. The sword's hilt was designed to be a 9-tailed fox, with a blade coming out of the mouth, and the blade itself shone like new, making it seem as if blood never touched it. Natsuki, you never officially answered why you like me, care to explain? Asked Naruto as he slowed his steps a bit while Natsuki also slowed and looked at the ground almost in shame. Naruto, you by all rights should be dead if not emotionally broken, yet here you are still standing and growing stronger. No demon half or full-blooded could ever go through what you have. If any did they would commit suicide to escape the pain. I know you tried a few times before meeting Matsume only to have them fail, but even that didn't stop you. You realized that it wasn't your time or someone else cared enough to stop you. Even now with the power to obliterate this village you chose not to because this is your home no matter what they put you through. Said Natsuki as she stopped a few sentences in and Naruto kept walking before he stopped as well. Certainly there must have been better suitors waiting for you back home. said Naruto as he looked back at Natsuki. Naruto, most demonic suitors flaunt their own power and drag whatever starstruck fangirl into bed. Hell, most demonic men cheat on their own wife. The only time that a man wouldn't is if he has multiple mates. You would on the other hand remain loyal only to those who you decided deserved to become one of your mates. That's why I chose you, said Natsuki as she remained rooted to the spot. She stopped and looking at the ground. Yes, that is true. I would only be loyal to those who were my mates, said Naruto with a smile while he walked up to Natsuki. Once he was in front of her, he gently grabbed her chin and forced her to look at his lightly smiling face before he gently kissed her. It of course didn't last long before he removed himself and swiftly bit down on her left cheek and channeled chakra into the bite. Shortly after, he released her while a tattoo of a golden kitsune sat on her cheek while its tails gently waved behind it and wrapped around her left eye socket. Come on, let's go get some breakfast. I'm suddenly hungry for Ichiraku ramen, said Naruto with a small smile while he grabbed her hand, and somehow both Hinata and Sasuke's, who were wearing the same clothing as the other day, hands as they ran by the two. Quickly Naruto ran through the village, completely dodging villagers or tripping the council members if he came across them before he stopped in front of a small stand with a few pieces of cloth running over the entrance that said Ichiraku. Salivating with minor delight, Naruto immediately walked in while three girls were left outside, two in confusion and the other just laughing at Naruto's antics. Come on. If we don't hurry, Naruto will possibly eat the stand out of food before we can even have any, said Natsuki as she entered the stand with Hinata and Sasuke following after. Upon entering the stand, they were met with the sight of Naruto sitting in one of the 6 bar stools and talking happily with a female. Slowly both Hinata and Sasuke narrowed their eyes dangerously as they stalked up to Naruto before they were stopped by Natsuki grabbing their shoulders. They of course turned their attention to her along with their glare before it completely dissipated from Natsuki's own glare. Don't attack her. She is more of a sister figure to Naruto and the daughter to Tsuchi, whispered Natsuki quickly before she released them and took the seat to the left of Naruto and looked over the older teen. The teen stood 5'2", looked to be 17 years old, had dark brown hair that hung to the middle of her back and was restrained by a light cream-colored bandana and light brown eyes. She was wearing a light cream-colored kimono top with a light cream-colored skirt that reached to her knees, while on top of that was a white apron. "Wanna flip a coin?" asked Sasuke while Hinata just nodded her head in a positive fashion. Calmly Sasuke pulled a coin out of her pocket and tossed it into the air. With bated breath both girls watched the coin before it fell back to the ground and landed perfectly straight up. "Sasuke, what are the possibilities of this happening?" asked Hinata as she picked up the coin and weighed it in her hand for any weight disturbances. "I have no clue, but if you want you can sit next to him, but in return I get to sit next to him next time," offered Sasuke, which Hinata agreed to without hesitation before she jumped into the last seat next to Naruto while Sasuke just took the seat next to Hinata. "Why, Naruto, you sure have been busy. It makes me really sad though. You'll be going off on missions, meaning you won't be able to visit me as much as you once did," said the female while she gave Naruto the puppy pout. "Ni-chan, you know I could never forget about you," said Naruto with a light laugh while he gently patted Am's head, causing her to pout further. "Stop tormenting the poor boy and take his order already," shouted a voice before another person walked out of the back of the stand. This person was a male that looked to be at least 43 years old, stood 5'5", had gray hair that was only noticeable on the sides and back of his head since the rest of it was covered by light cream-colored hat, and his eyes were completely shut. He was also wearing a cream kimono top with matching cream pants, while on top of the kimono was a light blue apron. "But Dad, Naruto hasn't been here in so long," whined Am while she turned the puppy pout onto her own father. "Then you should ask him what he wants along with his guests, then ask him how he has been," said the older man while he smirked at his daughter, who looked back to see both Hinata and Sasuke with their extra features showing. "What are you two doing? You can't just walk around the village like that," hissed out Am as she quickly pulled both girls over the counter. "What do you mean we can't walk around the village like this?" asked both girls with restrained anger while the fur on their tails stood stock straight. "What she means is you can't have your extra features showing. It's okay for when you're in a private setting, but out in public it's a death sentence waiting to happen," explained the older man while he quickly slapped a seal onto their foreheads. Shortly after applying the seals, both girls' foxtails and eats disappeared in a minor wave. "Oh, we didn't know," said both girls as they looked at the ground depressed. "Don't beat yourselves up. I should have taught you a simple illusion that all demons use to hide themselves in the human world. Sadly, my hunger and slight overexposed to love somewhat fried my brain. For now you'll need to wear those seals until I can teach you the illusion. For now just get back over here so we can eat," said Naruto with anger directed at himself while the girls nodded in response and rejoined Naruto and Natsuki. "Well now then, what will you all be having?" asked Am with a chipper tone in hopes of lightening the dreary mood. "I'll have 3 large bowls of your vegetable ramen," said Naruto with a minor scowl, but it was outshone by his enthusiasm for being able to have ramen. I'll have a large bowl of beef, chicken, and vegetable combination ramen if you don't mind. Said Natsuki with a smile. I'll have a large miso ramen. Said Hinata shyly while she lightly looked at the counter. I'll have the same as Natsuki if you don't mind. Said Sasuke while AM wrote down their orders before handing them off towards her father. AM, how did your father know how to hide our extra features? Asked Hinata in hopes of creating a form of conversation. Well, as you know, my father and I are about the only family that Naruto has other than the Hokage, and as such we are informed of certain things by Naruto. My father was actually at one point in Anbu and was a seal apprentice before he retired, married my mother and had me. Back before Naruto could even hide his features, Natsuki was required to hide them with a genjutsu, especially since Naruto didn't have the proper control. One day my father asked Natsuki if it was possible to create a seal that could hide the extra features up until either his chakra destroyed the seal or he could cast the genjutsu without any help. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but basically it took them at least nearly a whole month just to draw out the seal and be certain that nothing was missing. Then it took another whole month for the Hokage to go over the seal and fix or add anything that he felt was necessary, and finally it only took a week to prepare for the sealing. After that, father began to create a smaller paper seal that once applied it would immediately blend into the skin tone of the person and would only disintegrate once the genjutsu was mastered to the point that anyone could hold it up even in combat situations. Stated AM while both Tucci and Natsuki lightly blushed from the comments. AM, stop chatting and get these ramen to our customers. Stated the old man from the kitchen while he balanced 4 bowls in his arms. Of course, father. Said AM as she quickly grabbed 2 of the bowls and set them down in front of Naruto, while the older man set the other 2 bowls down in front of Natsuki and Sasuke before he returned to the kitchen and exited with another 2 bowls. Quickly he set the one more bowl down in front of Naruto and the other in front of Hinata before he backed away while everyone grabbed a pair of chopsticks. Itadakimasu. Said everyone before they dug in before both Hinata and Sasuke had to stop halfway through their own bowls to see that Naruto was already on his second. Slowly they gulped down their current mouthful and watched Naruto in fascination and morbid curiosity as Naruto stuffed nearly half the bowl of noodles into his mouth. Silently they looked back to their bowls and just ate at a similar pace, only slightly more dignified. Thanks for the ramen, old man and AM Ni-chan. Said Naruto while both Hinata and Sasuke just started to drink the broth before they set their bowls down onto the counter with a gentle clink. No problem, Naruto just promised to come by more often and tell us about what is going on. Said AM as she picked up his 3 bowls, Natsuki's, Hinata's, and Sasuke's bowl, before she shoved them off to her father, who just so happened to walk out from the back door. We'll be certain to stop by after every mission, AM-san. Said both Hinata and Sasuke as they got out of their seats. Please just call me AM or Ni-chan. After all, you are going to be 2 of Naruto's wives. Said AM while she gave them a small wink with a small laugh as Naruto and Natsuki left the stand. Oh, okay, AM. Said both girls once more before they followed after Naruto and Natsuki. Luckily it didn't take them long to catch up to the 2 others before they were off towards the 7th training grounds while talking over what the test would be. If you ask me, it may be a test of skill so he can see how we rank, how we react in combat, and possibly to the death of a teammate. Said Sasuke while the others listened while they thought over what the test was. It could also be a test of teamwork to assure that we wouldn't abandon a comrade in the thick of battle. That was what the foundation of Konoha was built upon. Said Hinata as she held a few points in her, saying. If you ask me, it will be a combination of the 2. Said Naruto as they stopped on a small bridge that went over a small creek into the training ground. The training ground was a large open space with another creek on the other side of the grounds, while both the left and right side were covered with forest. In front of the right forest were 3 logs which were firmly planted in the ground, while behind them was a black stone with several names imprinted on the surface. Standing in front of the stone was Kakashi. Hey, Kakashi-sensei. Shouted Sasuke, completely forgetting about Hinata, Naruto, Natsuki, and her own advanced hearing which pretty much floored them. Silently Kakashi turned to them before a small eye smile stretched on his only noticeable portion of his face before he flash-stepped so he was in front of his team. Good morning, team. Are you ready for your test? Asked Kakashi while everyone slowly stood back up while lightly nodding their heads. Good. Now then, your test is simple, all you have to do is get these 2 bells from me before this timer goes off directly at noon. Said Kakashi as he pulled out 2 bells from his back pouch and then a small clock that showed it was clearly 11 o'clock. Not a second after he quickly flash-stepped so he was standing beside the 3 posts. He then proceeded to set the clock down before tying the 2 bells onto his waist. Kakashi-sensei, what happens if we don't get a bell and why are there only 2? Asked Hinata while she mentally went back to what she said about the test being about teamwork. Well, if you don't get a bell before the timer goes off, you will be tied to one of these posts, while the other 2 of you will be allowed to have one of the 2 lunches I packed for you. Also, if you don't get a bell you will be sent back to the Ninja Academy. Oh, and one last thing, come at me with the intent to kill. Now then, 3, 2, 1, Tatakai. Stated Kakashi while everyone immediately jumped into the surrounding scenery, all except for Naruto. Well, it seems that they have hiding down, although Naruto could use some work. Thought Kakashi while he gently slid 2 kunai out from his sleeves and quickly put them into a reverse grip. Here I come, Kakashi-sensei. Whispered Naruto before 4 more of him popped into existence beside him. Calmly Naruto lifted his hand before he brought it down in a downward strike, along with a blade of wind that traveled straight towards Kakashi, causing his single eye to widen as he jumped out of the way just barely in the nick of time. Not a moment later he felt something strike him from behind, sending him flying towards the forest, just as several kunai and shuriken came flying towards. Quickly thinking on the fly, Kakashi replaced himself with a Naruto clone that was close to the real Naruto. Running on autopilot, Kakashi then grabbed Naruto's shirt collar before following it up with 3 quick knees to his stomach before spinning him and letting go of him. Slowly Kakashi released a silent breath before he had to jump to the left to dodge a fireball that blew up where he formerly stood while also sending boulders flying into the air. Not a moment later Natsuki appeared behind the boulders before she just lightly tapped them and sent them flying straight towards Kakashi, forcing him to quickly replace himself with a poor defenseless log that was crushed into kindle. They're really aiming to kill me. Thought Kakashi before he had to grab a wrist and quickly pinned the person to the ground while he held his knee to the back of her head. Patience is a ninja's greatest ally. Said Kakashi. So is deception, Kakashi. Replied the girl before she puffed out of existence and the place around him wavered lightly before completely dispelling. The area was the same, except for the fact he couldn't detect his students' chakra signatures. Lightly getting up he cautiously walked towards the middle of the field and looked around in hopes of noticing something out of place. Ninja art. 10,000 years of death. Lightly whispered Naruto as he rose up out of the ground behind Kakashi with his hands in the Taurus symbol before he shoved them up into his ass and released the chakra. The result was rather comical since the only part of Kakashi that could be seen was his right eye and it seemed to show a combination of surprise, shock, horror, and fear all mixed into that one area before he was sent flying towards the creek before he landed in it. It only took him a couple seconds to resurface, but by that time Hinata had already walked towards the water with the devil's smile on her face. Water style. Multi-water dragon jutsu. Stated Hinata as 7 dragons made of water surrounded Kakashi with their deep yellow eyes glaring down at Kakashi. Not wasting a minute, Kakashi immediately jumped into the air, knowing that the dragons couldn't reach him up there before his eyes widened in shock as all the dragons started to fire human-sized water bullets at him. Pain. Grand Fireball Jutsu. Stated Kakashi as he quickly preformed the hand signs, removed his mask slightly before breathing out a large fireball. Gyuden. Great breakthrough. Said Kakashi once more as winds came from behind him and struck the fireball, increasing its heat and size before it stuck the water balls, creating a minor explosion. Kakashi then proceeded to dive back down to the surface only to have to dodge water dragons as they aimed to strike him. Faintly, while dodging one of the water dragons he caught sight of Hinata, ordering the dragons with a single act of pointing her finger at him. He of course in his moment of distraction was struck by one of the water dragons, completely soaking him and making him land in small puddles. Slowly he got back up only to see Natsuki, which scared him. No, it wasn't because of the fact that she was the most powerful demon, was because flowing between her middle and point finger were little bolts of lightning. Baton. Lighting shot. Stated Natsuki while she pointed her fingers at the puddles before the lightning flew off her fingers straight for the puddle. Acting quickly, Kakashi immediately replaced himself with another log as he landed a few feet away from the puddles while the log was immediately charred from the lightning water combo. Quickly he drew out several kunai before he began to toss them at Natsuki and Hinata, who dodged them without a problem until she noticed that they were exploding kunai. Acting quickly, Kakashi quickly activated the seals, causing the tags to blow up and knock both Natsuki and Hinata unconscious. Page Bushin. Said Kakashi while he took a few deep breaths while he quickly gave a mental command to his clones who followed it without question. Silently he watched as the clones tied both girls up onto different posts that were away from one another. Kakashi also took notice of the time only to realize that it had only been nearly 5 minutes since the test started. Only half an hour and already they have me breathing heavily. I definitely feel sorry for whoever manages to piss off these genin. Thought Kakashi while he instinctively reached for his book pouch before he stopped and changed his direction and quickly pulled out a kunai. Not a moment later several kuni and shuriken were flying towards him and he was able to completely deflect them or dodge them without a problem. Gyuden. Grand Windstorm. Stated someone from behind Kakashi before he was suddenly struck by gale force winds that sent him flying while his clothing gained several cuts on it, all except for his mask, before he struck a tree face first. With shaky movements Kakashi removed himself from the tree with a few bits of tree bark sticking to his face mask. Quickly Kakashi shook his head back and forth, causing the tree bark to fall off his face mask which was still in perfect condition. Shakily he got up to his feet before he turned to see Naruto standing there performing another set of hand signs, while Sasuke stood next to him performing a different set of head signs. "Pain. Kairu Eden," shouted Sasuke as she finished her hand signs before a large fire dragon came from her mouth flying towards Kakashi. "Gyuden. Great breakthrough," shouted Naruto not a moment later as the wind sped up and increased the dragon fire's intensity. "Shit, shit, 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 shit," mentally shouted Kakashi as he flashed steeped out of the area and into the forest behind the two teens and watched as the dragon created a crater in the ground that was burning along the edges. He then proceeded to watch as both of them went to their tied-up teammates and quickly cut them free before grabbing them and running off into the forest. "Well, they have the teamwork part down. Thought I think it's time I get serious," thought Kakashi as he gently placed his hand over his forehead protector. But Naruto and Sasuke. Currently both Naruto and Sasuke were traveling through the trees with their unconscious teammates on their backs before they stopped in a clearing and set both girls down. "We need to wake them up. Any ideas, Sasuke?" asked Naruto as he watched Sasuke gain a devilish smirk on her face. He then watched as Sasuke bent down until her face was even with Hinata's before she gently pressed her lips against Hinata's while gently rubbing her cheek with her hand. Naruto was of course wide-eyed with a blush coating his face before he turned around and attempted to not watch. "I think I'll stick with smelling salts," said Naruto while he walked towards Natsuki's prone form and pulled out a small vial. He then carefully removed the cork stopper from the bottom before he gently held it underneath her nose, letting her get a small whiff before he pulled the bottle away just as she started to groan. A few seconds later her eyes lightly fluttered open half open while she gently set her left hand on her head. "Ugh, Naruto?" asked Natsuki as she opened her eyes further and took in her surroundings. "Where's Kakashi, where are we, and why in the holy kami's name are Hinata and Sasuke kissing one another?" asked Natsuki while her eyes landed on Hinata and Sasuke in a heavy kiss causing her eyes widen in shock. "1. I have no idea where Kakashi is. 2. We're about 2 to 3 minutes away from training ground 7 and finally Sasuke started to kiss Hinata to wake her up," said Naruto while he quickly pulled out a scroll and tossed it at them and successfully hit Sasuke in the head, causing her to yelp in pain. "Naruto, what was that for?" growled out Sasuke as she rubbed her head trying to ease the throbbing. "Sorry, but we need the two of you to be focused. From my best guess I would say we have at least 50 minutes before our test is over. Kakashi will also be more than on guard so we need a plan," said Naruto as both Hinata and Sasuke nodded their heads in agreement. "Okay, but first of all how did I do those jutsu?" asked Hinata as she thought back to the water dragons and water bullets. "It might be a possible side effect of becoming a demon. Since Naruto was changed by my power he also received some of my knowledge on jutsu. So possibly when Naruto changed you too, you may have also received some of the knowledge that Naruto had received," stated Natsuki before a kunai landed in the center of their temporary base. Acting quickly everyone got up onto their feet before they were pulled underground with only their heads showing. "Earth style. Headhunter jutsu," stated Kakashi's voice before he appeared in the center of the group with his left eye showing, causing everyone's eyes open in shock. Kakashi's left eye was a Sharingan eye. Lesson 1. Ninjutsu. Was all Kakashi said with a serious expression before it was broken by laughter from his captives. Ninja rule number 1, never assume the enemy is captured until they are either unconscious or dead, and number 2, look underneath the underneath. Said all the genin while Kakashi just looked confused. Brand clone explosion jutsu. Stated the genin before they began to glow before blowing up sending Kakashi flying into the air. Quickly Kakashi righted himself in the air while pulling out a kunai and blocked a sword slash that would have cut him in half without a problem, although the force behind the blow sent him towards the ground. When he was about to strike the ground, he quickly landed on his hands before backflipping a few times and jumped into a tree just as several copies of Naruto popped out of the ground, attempting to give him several uppercuts to his jaw. Lesson 2. Taijutsu, said Kakashi as he quickly rushed Naruto as he popped out of the ground and landed a solid punch to his gut before kicking him in the side of his head. He then followed up with a few false punches aimed at Naruto's head before he swept him off his feet and landed a punch to his face, driving his head into the ground before he was forced to block an axe kick from Sasuke. Sasuke then proceeded to follow up with another kick aimed for Kakashi's right side, only to have that successfully blocked before a small smirk graced her face and she reached out and touched one of the bells before she was thrown back. Acting quickly she quietly performed a backflip and landed on her feet while Naruto got out of his creator and joined her with Natsuki appearing via Jinjutsu. Wait, there's only 3 of them here, where's the 4th, started thinking Kakashi before it was interrupted. You're in my field of division. 8 trigram seal. 64 palm. Stated Hinata's voice from behind him. 2 palm. Stated Hinata as she lightly tapped on Kakashi's arms. 4 palm. said Hinata once more as she tapped 4 more places on Kakashi. 8 palm. Hinata again as she continued to strike him, closing his chakra points. 16 palm. Once again Hinata was striking chakra points, only she was moving smoother and quicker while increasing the amount of chakra added. 32 palm. Hinata was nimbly dodging and any resistance Kakashi placed up and getting past his defenses with ease. 64 palm. Shouted Hinata as she pulled her hands back before slamming them forward and striking the main chakra point in the human body, sending him flying back a few feet and down to a single knee, breathing heavily. Although Kakashi didn't miss how his possible students were also breathing heavily while they also collapsed to their own knees before they all could hear a ringing sound coming from the training grounds. "Looks like time's up," said Kakashi as he breathed heavily while placing his hide over his Sharingan eye and shakily got up to his feet. He then walked over to Hinata and helped her to her feet while Naruto helped both Natsuki and Sasuke up to their feet while leaning against one another. They then proceeded to walk back towards the training ground in silence, and once they got there they then went and sat down in front of the stone with Kakashi in front of them. "Now then, does anyone know what this test was about?" asked Kakashi as he stared intently at his possible students, who in turn looked at one another. "This was a test of skill to see how we would react in particular combat situations, but the whole test was about teamwork," said everyone while Kakashi's patented eye smile appeared on his face. "Very good, you're the first team to finally figure that out, but since no one was able to get a bell I'm afraid that you all fail, but I'm willing to allow for you to all have a second chance in about an hour. So until then feel free to eat one of the bento boxes that I packed," said Kakashi as he got up and started to walk off before he turned around. "Oh, and one last thing. Naruto is not allowed to eat anything," said Kakashi before Naruto was pulled underground so only his head was showing. Naruto's left eye was slightly twitching before he took notice of the fact that there were 2 acorns tied to his waist. "The Kakashi-sensei, why are there 2 acorns tied to your waist?" asked Naruto while Kakashi instinctively patted the bells only to have his eyes widen in shock. Quickly he turned around and looked at Hinata, who shook her head in a negative fashion along with Sasuke. Natsuki on the other hand was lazily tossing the bells in the air before she took notice of Kakashi looking at her. "What, looking for these, Scarecrow?" asked Natsuki before she tossed them to Hinata and Sasuke. Sasuke then tossed one onto Naruto's head while he smirked. "Well then I guess you pass, but I was planning on passing you anyway, considering you all were able to work as a team and the fact most of you know several high-ranking jutsu. Congratulations. Meet here tomorrow for your first missions as ninja at 10 o'clock. Jana," said Kakashi before he disappeared in a puff of smoke while 3 genin and a demoness smiled and shouted in happiness before removing Naruto from the earth. With Kakashi. Currently Kakashi was walking towards the Hokage Tower while smiling happily at his team that he now had. "I not only have Sensei's son but one of Obito's family. Finally I can repay my department to you, Obito, but I had better not show favoritism. I don't need another me walking around, I mean wouldn't be bad, it would actually too extremely funny if not for the fact that Might Guy's mini-clone would consider the person their eternal rival." At that Kakashi had to suppress a mild shudder before he steeled his emotions and walked into the Hokage's office where several other instructors stood but only 2 stood out. The first instructor was a female that stood 5'5", had deep crimson eyes, black hair that reached to the middle of her back and looked no older than 27. She was wearing a form of medical tape that acted similar to a dress and did little to hide the D cup she had and blue ninja sandals. Standing next to her was a male that stood 6'2", had brown eyes, blue hair that was short, was smoking a cigarette and looked no older than 27. He was wearing a green jonin vest over a blue long-sleeve shirt, blue pants with a shuriken and kunai pouch, and blue ninja sandals. "Ah, Kakashi, nice of you to join us on time," stated the Hokage as he lazily puffed out a small stream of smoke from his pipe. "Now then, Kurenai, you pass or fail?" asked the Hokage as he carefully folded his hands on his desk so not to disturb his paperwork. They passed with flying colors. Currently Sakura is weak but has the finer points for Jinjutsu. Shino is just like his clan, he doesn't base his opinions off of what he hears but rather what he witnesses or learns about any person. Kiba on the other hand is loud, brash, and disrespectful to not only females but anyone who pisses him off. Altogether they have the ability to become a successful tracking and capture team," said Kurenai as she bowed to the Hokage. "Good. Now then, Asuma Saratobi, pass or fail?" asked the Hokage as he turned his attention towards his only son. They passed if only barely. Ino, Choji, and Shikamaru have firm grasps on their family techniques but they also have their own flaws. Ino is rather fantasy-struck and believes that she will be saved by her knight in shining armor and not to mention extremely bossy. Choji is too trusting but has a firm grasp on what a ninja's job entails. Shikamaru on the other hand is extremely lazy and considers everything troublesome unless it's watching clouds. Altogether they may make another perfect Ino Shikacho group if their flaws are finally hammered out. stated Asuma as he spoke around his cigarette before bowing to his father. Good. Now Kakashi, should I just put your team down as a failure? Asked the Hokage while several Jonin senseis laughed lightly under their breath. Actually they passed. They were able to work together from the very beginning of the test and were able to force me to reveal that. Said Kakashi with pride while several Jonin had their eyes open wide. I take it that Naruto also did that with those three. Said Saratobi as he looked at Kakashi for confirmation. I do believe he did change them. I was able to catch the seal array on them from time to time. Now then, if you excuse me, I need to think up a training regime for those three. Said Kakashi as a slow dark chuckle rose from deep within his chest. Nervously all the Jonin stepped back while looking at the Hokage. Just don't overdo it. After all, we don't need to kill them, Kakashi. Replied the Hokage with some mirth while Kakashi gave a simple nod of the head as he walked out of the office. 3 weeks later, this is Moon Angel, approximate distance from target is 5 meters. This is Ice Queen, same distance from target. This is Solar Flare, currently above the target. By the way, next time I'm choosing the code names Kakashi. But you now have permission to engage the target and Naruto, don't tell me what to do. Said Kakashi before Naruto fell from a tree right above the target and was able to successfully grab it. I got ya. Smirked out Naruto. Is there a red ribbon on the right ear with the name of Tora on it? Asked Kakashi via headset. Yep. Excellent work, Naruto. Now join up with your teammates and proceed to consider this mission complete. Said Kakashi over a small earpiece while Naruto just nodded in response and proceeded to the meeting point. When he reached the meeting point, he noticed both Hinata and Sasuke sitting on the ground while Kakashi was reading a brand new Icha Paradise book. One fully captured cat ready for delivery. Said Naruto as he proudly presented a log. Naruto, that's a log. Said Kakashi as he looked at the log in Naruto's hands. Naruto of course was looking at it with horror before he heard something meowing at him. Cautiously everyone looked into a nearby tree to see the target walking upside down on a branch while taunting them. Kakashi, is that cat walking on a tree branch upside down? Shouted Sasuke as she pointed a perfectly sharpened claw at said cat. It would appear so, although my question is on how long it has been able to do this. Especially since I remember having to chase the same cat and it was never able to do something like this. Said Kakashi while his only good eye began to twitch in annoyance. I'm authorizing the means of anything to catch that cat. Stated Kakashi while everyone started to pull out kunai, shuriken, ninja wire and several other things. Tora of course just stuck its tongue out at them before it started to jump off towards Konoha. That cat. Shouted Kakashi as his team took off after the cat and were able to find it after a few minutes laying out in sunlight just relaxing. Slowly evil little grins plastered themselves onto the 3 Genin's faces while they silently pulled out some more kunai with ninja wire on them before they let them go and wrapped the cat in the ninja wire. Once all the wire was constricting the cat, the team jumped down and quickly tied it up so it was hanging upside down on a stick before they successfully marched back to their sensei. Okay, this time I believe that we have it. Stated Naruto as he along with the other 2 meet up with Kakashi once more. Where is it? Asked Kakashi as he looked at the cut ropes on the stick while the genin could only stare at the stick with annoyance while they stared back into the forest to see the cat laughing at them. Silently all the genin looked at one another before they took off running after the cat with Kakashi following them. Tora of course just started to run through the forest, running through hollowed out logs, in between closely grown trees and across a small river before Hinata finally caught up to it only to get her foot caught in a deer trap and leaving her hanging in the air while Naruto and Sasuke continued after the cat. The next person to nearly catch the cat was Sasuke as she had successfully caught a hold of its tail only for it to perform a substitution with Hinata, so Sasuke's hand was groping Hinata's but which caused Naruto to turn a deep shade of red while Kakashi just giggled perversely. That was before both Hinata and Sasuke gave him a good punch to his jaw that was chakra enforced and sent him flying while screaming pervert. Naruto of course grabbed both girls by their shoulders before he pulled them back to where Hinata once hung before stopping short. Standing at the water's edge was Tora, who was lightly lapping at the water. Slowly Naruto motioned for the girls to stay put before he silently crept up on Tora before he pounced on Tora and successfully captured it once more. You aren't going anywhere this time. Stated Naruto before he was suddenly shocked by lightning and dropped Tora, who was bristling with electricity while it flashed a devious smile. Shortly after, Tora released a bolt of electricity from its mouth at Naruto that sent him flying back towards Hinata and Sasuke. With angry glares the girls stared at the cat, who was still glowing lightly with static before it completely disappeared. Suiton. Water prison jutsu. Stated Kakashi as a sphere of water entrapped the cat while Kakashi's left had remained in the prison. Kakashi-sensei let go of the jutsu. Shouted both girls while Kakashi looked at them with confusion before he was shocked by lighting and with him standing in water while holding a water prison only made it worse. After a few seconds the water prison was completely gone, while Kakashi could best be described as a well-charred piece of meat, while he was also covered with a small amount of soot. "Oh look at all the pretty naked women," slurred out Kakashi as he released a small puff of smoke from his mouth before falling over and being carried away by the river. Both Hinata and Sasuke couldn't decide whether to help out their sensei or leave him as he was because of what he said as they watched the river carry him away. While they watched him they were also able to hear the sound of a metal door meeting against plastic before they turned their attention to Tora, only to see Naruto standing there with Tora successfully locked inside a plastic pet cage. "We are never taking this mission ever again," said Naruto with seriousness while the girls nodded in agreement before they headed off towards the village. Hokage's office. "Dear you are old man. One Tora the cat successfully captured," said Naruto as he slammed the cage down onto the Hokage's desk, while Sarutobi looked at him questionably with his pipe in his mouth, as did Iruka who was sitting beside him. "Okay Naruto. Now then care to explain where your sensei is, why your clothing is burned, and why the cat is in a cage?" asked the Hokage as he removed his pipe and looked at the three. "Last time we saw Kakashi he was taking a minor nap in a river. As for the other two you wouldn't believe me even if I showed you," said Naruto while the Hokage gave him the look that said try me. "That cat was able to use chakra and used a Raiten jutsu on Naruto and Kakashi," said Sasuke as she glared at the caged animal. Almost as if sensing the glare the cage began to jump, shake and rattle. "I hardly doubt that Tora could do that. Isn't that rigged?" started the Hokage as he opened the cage only to have a cat bite his hand and add lightning chakra to the bite, shocking the old man and causing him to fall backwards while the cat attempted to jump to freedom only to be caught by an extremely large woman who crushed the cat in between her assets. "Oh my baby Tora, those mean ninja didn't hurt you now did they? Beside you know better than to run off without mommy." "Oh yes you do," gushed the owner while she crushed the cat in a hug as the genin smirked evilly while hoping that the women would kill the cat. "Here you go Sarutobi, the money for the mission," said the woman as she set the money on his desk before walking out of the room while still crushing the life out of the cat. Right as the woman was leaving Kakashi walked into the room to see Sarutobi on the floor before looking at his team. "The cat," was all they said, while Kakashi could only shake his head in disappointment before taking his position behind his squad. Luckily Sarutobi was able to get up while holding his head. "Okay Squad 7. Seeing as the cat is able to perform jutsu, I'm raising the rank of that mission to at least B rank. You will also be paid accordingly. Now then I'm certain that you'll also want another mission. Right no we have babysitting the chief counselor's 3-year-old, helping his wife to do the shopping, digging up potatoes," started Sarutobi while he read the missions off a list before being interrupted by a cat squeal and the women from before running back into the office. "Sarutobi my poor Tora-chan has just run off once again," said the woman before she ran out of the room. "We're catching Tora the cat for the third time this week," finished the third Hokage with a sigh. "No way. I'm a ninja not some fucking babysitter, farmer, or animal control. I'm supposed to be a killer," stated Naruto in defiance. "How dare you Naruto? You're just a brand new genin with no form of combat experience. How do you plan on protecting yourself of your teammates if you're outnumbered?" shouted Iruka as he slammed his hands against the desk. "Iruka I'm not human and neither are they," said Naruto as the girls removed their jinjutsus showing their extra appendages. "It seems you don't understand the understanding of the tasks you've been given. Listen, many different kinds of requests come into our village every day. From simple babysitting to assassinations. These requests are carefully recorded, analyzed, then ranked A, B, C, or D depending on their difficulty. We ninja are also ranked by ability. Hokage at the top, Jonin, Chunin, and Genin at the bottom. At the highest level we select the missions and assign them to ninja who have the appropriate skill and experience, and if the mission is successful, we receive a fee that supports our village and our work. Since you're untried genin just starting down the shinobi path you are given D rank missions of course," explained the Hokage before he took notice of Naruto not even paying attention. "Anyway I was thinking of trying the Tintatsu ramen today. What about you Hinata and Sasuke?" asked Naruto as he completely ignored the Hokage. "Sounds really good. Maybe we should just see if AM and Tucci would be willing to make a bowl large enough for all of us to eat out of," suggested Hinata while Kakashi listened in. "Silence," shouted the Hokage as he stared down all 4 ninja in front of him. "Oh sorry," said Kakashi as he rubbed the back of his head and smiled at the Hokage. "Listen old man. I'm not asking for a B-ranked mission. I just want one that will get me out of these walls for a few weeks. Is that so much to ask?" said Naruto as he stared down the Hokage. For a few minutes nothing was said as the two shinobi stared at one another before the old Hokage released a sigh. "Fine I'll give you a simple C rank. The mission is to escort Tazuna back to Wave Country while guarding him from bandits there and while he works on a bridge. Iruka please go get Tazuna-san," said the Hokage as he replaced his pipe in his mouth before it broke in half. After a few moments all three Genin and Kakashi had to cover their noses as they were assaulted by the scent of very cheap sake before the door opened up. "What the? I pay you good money and all I get are a whole bunch of little snot-nosed kids," said the person that walked in before he took a long swig of his sake, allowing for everyone to take in his appearance. The man stood roughly around 5'8", had short grey hair, black eyes with glasses over them, and looked to be 59. He was wearing a lightweight brown sleeveless shirt with light brown pants that were held around his waist by a rope belt and brown sandals. He also had a white towel around his neck while a forest green backpack was on his back. He also had a faint blush from his sake. "And you the two dark-haired girls. You look like you could be easily taken out without a problem," said the man as the girls gained tick marks on their foreheads before they attempted to jump their higher. They would have nearly done so too if Naruto didn't quickly grab them and hold them down. "Trust me when I say this, fool. Don't piss off anyone who bears the mark of a ninja village, for it could be the very last thing you ever do," said Naruto while he quickly pressed at the base of their spines, causing them to immediately calm down. "I am Tazuna, a master bridge builder, and I must return to my country," started Tazuna before he was interrupted. "Yes, we're aware of the mission details, Mr. Tazuna. Team prepare for a month-long mission and be at the gate at noon tomorrow," said Kakashi as he turned his attention towards his team. "Of course, Kakashi-sensei," replied all three genin before they disappeared in a small whirlwind. "I can't believe it. We finally got our first official C-rank mission," said Naruto with disbelief as he along with the girls walked out of the office. "I know. We should inform my mother so she can send a message to your mother," said Sasuke with a smile on her face while Naruto just smiled sadly. "I'll admit I'm worried about meeting her," said Naruto as he walked slightly slower as he stepped out of the Hokage's tower into the early afternoon sunlight. "Naruto, don't worry about it. We'll cross that bridge once we get there, and don't forget you have Hinata, Natsuki, Kakashi, and myself to draw strength from," said Sasuke as she gently took his hand into her own, causing his arm to stiffen and Sasuke to scowl. "Come on, let's go get some Ichiraku's ramen so we can brag about how the mighty Sharingan Kakashi was defeated by a simple cat," suggested Hinata while Naruto seemed to relax at the thought. "Alright, but I'm paying this time," said Naruto with a small smile while he gained a slight skip to his step as they walked towards the small stand. It luckily didn't take long for them to reach the stand since it was only a mile walk away from the Hokage tower. Calmly Naruto pulled the cloth aside while motioning for the girls to enter. Slowly the girls couldn't help but giggle at how polite and refined Naruto was being. They then proceeded into the stand before they took their typical seats and Naruto sat in between the two girls. Not a moment later a small blood-red fox jumped down onto Naruto's head from the ceiling before it curled up into Naruto's hair. "Hello to you, Natsuki-chan," said the group as they lightly rubbed her head causing her to purr in delight before it was ruined by the sound of something getting hit with a frying pan. Quickly the group looked up to see Am walk out of the kitchen, holding a frying pan in her hands and a pissed-off expression on her face. Although the expression immediately disappeared when she took notice of the group. "Hello Naruto-kun, Sasuke-chan, Hinata-chan, and Itsuki-chan. What can I get you?" asked Am as she folded her hands together before taking notice of the frying pan. Slowly she nervously chuckled before she quickly hid it behind her back and rubbed her head lightly. I'll be right back," said Am while she backed up to the kitchen door before she rushed in and came back out with a small notepad and pen. "Now then, can I take your orders?" asked Am with a smile on her face. "Of course Am-ni-chan, we would like one extra large bowl of Tingtatsu ramen if you don't mind," said Naruto as Am quickly wrote it down and looked at the other two. "If you don't mind, we're just going to eat out of Naruto's bowl," said Sasuke while Hinata nodded in response and both of them could have sworn that they saw Am's eyebrows shoot up into her hair from shock before it was replaced with a giddy smile. "My Naruto-kun, not even officially dating for a month and already sharing your meals as if you're married in human terms," said Am while she watched in amusement as the group sputtered trying to create a response. "It almost makes me wonder what else you've done. Maybe a little drinking and having sex," said Am as she turned away from the group while she held a smile on her face. Quickly though she composed herself and turned to see the group blushing a deep crimson that it made her wonder if there was any blood flowing anywhere else in their bodies. Am," stuttered out Naruto while she just leaned in close to him before she pinched his cheek. "Oh come on Naruto-kun, you aren't the only one who is devious like a fox," said Am while everyone finally caught on to the fact that she was teasing them. Sadly before they had the time to create a retort Am had already disappeared into the kitchen to begin preparing their food. "So how was your mission today?" asked Am from the small window that allowed for the group to watch her as she made their meal. "It was the capture tour mission," said the team unhappily. "Oh, was it really that bad?" asked Natsuki from on top of Naruto's head. "You have no idea. We had to catch that cat 3 times since it kept getting away from us. The first time it replaced itself with a log. The second time it cut itself free," The final time I got sick of it constantly getting away, so I locked it away into an anti-chakra pet cage, just so it wouldn't get away. Although I will admit it was a shocker when we saw that cat using chakra along with lightning techniques," said the group with a dark chuckle. Hell, even Sharingan no Kakashi was defeated by the cat, shocking him to a nice crispy brown," said Sasuke with mirth as she still remembered how Kakashi looked after that. "Really think I could use this as blackmail against him?" asked AM with a smile while she brought out a large bowl of ramen before setting it down in front of the group. "You possibly could, but if you ask me, you should attempt to spread this as a rumor through the Jonin and Anbu divisions. He would be completely humiliated since he is one of the best Jonin and was one of the best Anbu back when he worked there. Now I did Akamasu," said Naruto as the rest of the group also said their praise before beginning to eat. It wasn't long before they finished the bowl of ramen. "Thanks AM. It was delicious like always," said Naruto with a smile towards his sister figure. "Thanks Naruto. Now then, how's training been?" asked AM with a twinkle in her eye. "It has been absolute hell. Kakashi has been forcing us to use multiple shadow clones to perform tree climbing, water walking, kunai balancing, and senbon balancing exercises, while at the same time we are required to use chakra to keep off of spears tipped with poison. As we're doing that, he has Ankoni and that 10-10 girl from Team 10 throwing so many different weapons at us to the point it has become either life or death. And as if it wasn't hard enough, he placed weight seals on our bodies to make it even harder. After that, he has our clones continuing to perform the chakra control exercises while he teaches us combat strategy so we can make plans up on the fly. After that, we are doing element training while he fights us with an army of clones that are doing everything in their power to kill us. He claims it will help us in the long run. Then we get a 15-minute break to eat lunch and regain some of our energy. After that, the rest of the day is nothing but missions to solidify our teamwork. Usually the next day we have to deal with subjects that we hadn't covered, which are usually Genjutsu, Taijutsu, and Ninjutsu. Then the rest of that day is used for us to work with our demonic chakra," said Hinata while she gently rubbed her shoulder where she could still feel the same exact location where she was accidentally nicked by a kunai thrown by Anko. "How about your ninjutsu progress?" asked AM while she walked around the counter and gently hugged Hinata. "Well, for me, I can now perform fire style. Grand Fireball Jutsu, fire style. Phoenix Flower Jutsu, fire style. Flame Dragon Bullet, fire style. Fire Dragon Jutsu, lightning style. Lightning Shot, lightning style. Thunder Armor, Shadow Clones, and Chidori. Demonic Wise, I know lightning style. Thunder Claws, fire style. Fox Fire and fire style. Fire Claws," said Sasuke with pride as Naruto, Hinata, and AM chuckled at her enthusiasm. "Currently I know water style. Water Bullet Jutsu, water style. Water Prison Jutsu, water style. Water Dragon Jutsu, water style. Multi-Water Dragon Jutsu, earth style. Inner Decapitation Jutsu, earth style. Earth Spire Jutsu, shadow clones, and earth style. Diamond Armor. Demonic Wise, I know water style. Water Whip, fire style. Fox Fire and water style. Water Claws. Currently I'm also learning how to become a team medic along with earth style. Earth Claws," said Hinata happily while she smirked in victory. "I can now currently perform wind style. Great Breakthrough, wind style. Grand Windstorm, wind style. Air Bullet, wind style. Air Dragon, water style. Water Dragon, shadow clones along with Grand Clone Explosion and water style. Water Clone. Demonic Jutsu Wise, I know Demon Art. Wind Claws, Demon Art. Fox Fire and finally Demon Art. Illusion of the Damned," said Naruto with an air of calmness while a small smirk played at the edge of his lips. "How about Taijutsu?" asked AM while she quickly took the bowl to the back room and rushed to the front and closed the stand for the day. "Taijutsu has been absolute hell. Every other day Team 10 comes over to give us Taijutsu training. Hinata is always paired up with her cousin who does very little to pull his punches. Sasuke is paired with 10-10. Overall they are evenly matched, if only because 10-10 uses weapons. As for me, I'm paired with Guy's mini-me clone," said Naruto as he slammed his head on top of the counter while AM could only sympathize with him since she had heard rumors about the energetic duo. Genjutsu?" asked AM as she steered the conversation clear of Team 10. "Actually, Naruto's ability to detect and dispel Genjutsu has improved even if only slightly. My ability has greatly increased along with Hinata-chan's, but to be quite honest, I mostly believe that it is because of the fact that we have greater chakra control and because Naruto-kun has absolutely no talent for Genjutsu," said Sasuke while a deep purple cloud formed over Naruto's head. AM, I wish that we could stay longer, but I'm afraid that we need to inform our families of our first C-rank mission," said Hinata as she gently rubbed Naruto's back. "Oh fine, but promise me that you'll tell me all about it," said AM as she pouted at her time with her brother figure being cut short. "Of course AM, we promise," said Sasuke as the group left the small stand and waved goodbye to their sister figure. Once they were outside the stand they quickly took to the rooftops and started heading towards the Uchiha district. "Hey Naruto, why was AM holding a frying pan when we got there?" asked Sasuke as they continued to jump from roof to roof. "It was probably because some poor perverted bastard groped her. He was lucky if you ask me because I would have done far worse as would have Tucci if he was in town," said Naruto as he jumped onto a cable connecting two buildings together and started to slide across it. Slowly the girls raised an eyebrow before they just shrugged their shoulders and did the same. With a slight bit of hesitation the girls looked below them and watched as the civilians went about their usual business while Anbu watched from the shadows. Occasionally from time to time there would be a Jonin and a couple of Chunin in the crowd also going about their business. Sadly their view was obstructed by the top of the next building and them slamming into Naruto. Good thing was their landing would be soft, bad thing Naruto was standing at the edge of the roof. Acting quickly the girls both grabbed one of his ankles and reinforced their legs with chakra so they wouldn't accidentally slip. Pulling with whatever strength they currently had they quickly got Naruto onto the roof in a few seconds. Okay, quick note, if you're going to pipe slide, please pay attention to what is in front of you. Not what is below, to the left, right, or above you," said Naruto as he sat down while Natsuki came out of his shirt. "Yes, I would not like to die before I have any children if you don't mind," said Natsuki as she took her human form and gently wrapped Naruto into a hug, causing him to stiffen slightly before completely relaxing into it. "Sorry Naruto," gently said Sasuke and Hinata while they also hugged him from his sides while they placed a chastised kiss on each of his cheeks. "I know," simply stated Naruto while he wrapped his arms around Hinata and Sasuke's waist and pulled them closer to himself. Silently the group sat there watching the world moving forward without them. It wasn't long before Naruto got an idea and quickly flash-stepped so they were sitting on top of the Hokage monument but more importantly directly on top of his father's head. The girls could barely contain a gasp as they were given a complete view of the village. Slowly they looked out across the village taking in everything they could. "This is my favorite place in the village. When I'm here there's no one to disturb me, no one to call me monster, and most importantly it is one of the few places that not everyone can reach. Even if they had perfect chakra control by the time they reached this place they would have too little chakra to do anything to me," said Naruto as he stared out across the village that he once swore he would lead. "Yeah, but now it's not only your place. It's ours," said Hinata with a smile as she gently wrapped her tail around Naruto's waist, along with Sasuke and Natsuki. "I still don't know what I did to deserve you but thanks," said Naruto with a smile before they were engulfed in smoke. Once the smoke cleared they took notice that they were sitting inside of the dining room at the Uchiha complex. "Now go get yourselves packed, we don't have too long before our C-rank mission to Nami no Kuni," said Naruto as he gently unwrapped the girls' tails from around him and disappeared towards his room. Shortly after the other girls also headed off towards their rooms. The next day East Gate. Present Naruto, Natsuki, Hinata and Sasuke were waiting underneath a nearby tree for not only their client but their sensei. Shortly after though their sensei appeared in front of them. "Yo," said Kakashi as he gave his team the peace eye before he took notice that their client was absent. "Oh, where is our client?" asked Kakashi as he looked around only to see a tumbleweed roll on by and caused a few raised eyebrows. "Honestly I have no idea Kakashi. Besides I don't care, all I care about is something more personal," said Naruto while he watched the tumbleweed disappear into town before stopping in front of a nearby bar. "Well then I guess that this is the best time for me to explain your new training regime," said Kakashi as he pulled out a scroll that had a deep dark aura surrounding it, causing the genin to gulp in fear. "Now then, as of today you will now be subjected to one single gravity seal that will be placed on your persona in the coming days. The gravity will be 2 times that of our natural gravity and you will also be required to continue to wear your current weights. For 3 hours every day you will be required to go against me in taijutsu spars by yourselves before you will all spar against me for 6 hours. You will then have a 2-minute break before you will be placed into 3 hours of increasing the speed at which you can perform your hand signs. After that you will each get one new jutsu to work on for exactly 1 hour. If any one of you isn't practicing, then you will have your gravity seals increased for 2 hours. Then you will be learning how to detect gen jutsu and how to dispel them without wasting a large amount of chakra. Once that is over you will continue with your chakra control exercises. Once team training is complete you will be allowed to continue studying nin, gen, or any other taijutsu you are learning on your own. If anyone misses a training day you will be forced to work 2 times longer on each of these things so you can catch up with your teammates," said Kakashi as he finished reading from the scroll while once again all the genin could do was stare at Kakashi in absolute horror and nod their head sadly. "But now then we wait," said Kakashi as he went straight back to his book while the group just sighed. "Naruto, quick question. Why exactly did the Hokage re-offer the capture the Tora mission to us after he said its rating would be modified to at least a B rank?" asked Sasuke as she looked at Naruto. Two reasons. The first was because he knew we could catch it without any problems, since we had seen some of its abilities. 2. It would take him a week to write up the paperwork, have the council approve of the mission level change, and then another week for the change to be set into place if the council approved the mission level change. Said Naruto as he pulled out a small black book and flipped through the pages before he dropped the book a bit. Not a moment later a cat passed in front of him and continued to run off into town. Wonder what that was about? Mentally asked Naruto before he did a shrug and went back to his book. Shortly after the girls were also looking at the book and began to read. Bingo book entry number 458. Name: Kushina Uzumaki aka The Red Death. Age: unknown. Height: 5'4", 5'8". Skills: excels in advanced sealing arts, advanced sword arts, and ninjutsu. Current alliance: unknown. Current bounty is roughly several thousand ryu and has a flee upon sighting order in stone, lightning, and water country. Bingo book entry number 459. Name: Zabuza Mamachi. Age: unknown. Height: 6. Skills: excels in silent killing along with water ninjutsu. Current alliance: no current alliance. Is now a missing nin for an attempt to overthrow the current Mizukage. Bounty is roughly only several hundred in water country but easily reached into the late thousands in several other countries. Is preferably wanted dead. Naruto, why are you looking at bingo book? Asked Sasuke after she finished looking over the 2 pages. It's better to be prepared for the possible future rather than being unprepared. Said Naruto as he closed the book and placed it away. True. Now team, I want to know what exactly you have packed away for this mission. Said Kakashi as he listened in on their conversation before quickly stowing his book away. I guess I'll go first. Currently on me I have my tent, sleeping bag, spare clothing, a first aid kit, 20 ration bars, 300 kunai and shuriken, 100 exploding tags, and a cookbook. Said Hinata while she turned to Sasuke. I also have a tent, sleeping bag, spare clothing, and first aid kit. I have on the other hand 15 ration bars, 250 kunai and shuriken, 3 Fuma shuriken, 4 fire jutsu scrolls, 50 exploding tags, my mother's blade, along with a scroll explaining the sword style she used, and the Uchiha clan summoning scroll. Said Sasuke with pride while Kakashi nodded in confirmation. I have on me my tent, sleeping bag, spare clothing, at least 3 first aid kits, 10 ration bars, 500 kunai and shuriken, 1 Fuma shuriken, 5 rolls on ninja wire, 2 wind scrolls, 500 exploding tags, 2 books written by the 4th Hokage titled Sealing Arts for Dummies and How to Become an S-Class Threat. And finally I also have my father's notes on the Flying Thunder God along with the Rasengan. Oh, and I also have a special photo of Hana and Yazuka. Said Naruto before it was pulled out of his hands by Hinata, Sasuke, and Itsuki. Clearly sitting in the photo was a female ninja that looked to be at least 17 years old, had dark brown hair that reached slightly past her ass and flared out behind her, while 2 bangs gently framed her face, light brown eyes, and the customary red triangles on her checks marking her as an Inyazuka. She was only wearing a small deep crimson bra that did very little to hold in her C-cup bust that was threatening to break out and a deep crimson thong that hugged her lower body. Clearly written on the photo in red ink was, "Thanks for the help, Naruto." And underneath that was a lipstick imprint and 3 paw marks. All the girls could do was stare in shock at the photo before it was removed from their grip, and even then they continued to stare at where the photo once was before they were snapped out of their shock by someone clearing their throat. If you wouldn't mind, I would like to get home. Said Tazuna from behind them. Silently everyone just turned to him before Naruto, Sasuke, Hinata, and Itsuki had to completely cover their noses from the scent coming off of Tazuna. What hellhole did you drag your sorry carcass out of? Asked Natsuki as she made a fan from her yokai and used it to keep his scent away from her and her sisters. Well, now you listen here, brat, started Tazuna before he was cut off by Kakashi. Well, now that you're here we can leave. Team, I want us to be in the diamond formation. Naruto, I want you to take point, Hinata and Sasuke, I want you 2 on the sides, Natsuki stick with Naruto, Tazuna you will be in the center, and I will take the back. Said Kakashi as the team took their points and started to move out. 2 miles outside the village. So Tazuna, was it? What exactly is Nami no Kuni like? Asked Hinata so they would know more about the location they were heading towards. Nami no Kuni is beautiful. The land is a complete island with forest. We are traditional a fishing village and trade is limited. That is why I'm building a bridge. I hoping that this will help stimulate the economy and increase trade. Said Tazuna almost hesitantly as they passed over 2 puddles. Interesting, especially since I just read through several different Hyuga Council reports that are claiming that Nami no Kuni has been taken over by Gato of Gato Shipping and is driving the economy into the ground. Said Hinata as she monitored his vitals and noticed that his heart rate increased. Not even a moment later both Hinata and Kakashi were wrapped with a chain. Standing behind Kakashi and Hinata were 2 people. The people looked to be in their 20s, had messy brown hair that reached to their shoulders and small beady black eyes. They were both wearing black and white camouflage pants, along with matching camouflage shirts and black ninja sandals. Over their shirts they wore a dark brown traveling cloak, on their forehead they wore Mizu Hit I-8, and they wore some form of breathing mask. "Do down," started the one on the left. "Three to go," finished the one on the right before they both pulled their chains, ripping both Hinata and Kakashi to pieces. Once they were ripped to shreds, they immediately took off towards Tazuna before they were stopped by a kunai landing in front of them. Nimbly they sidestepped the kunai and continued towards the bridge builder before the one on the left received a fist to the face, sending him flying back along with the other. Silently Naruto stood there with his head down and his left fist out as his chakra flared around him. Slowly he lowered his fist before he raised his head, showing his eyes had turned a deep violet before he deliberately walked towards the two slowly. Inking quickly, the left person quickly detached himself from the other ninja before he rushed Naruto. As he drew closer he never took notice of one of Naruto's tails slowly coming out until it was wrapped around his neck. Trying his best he attempted to break free of his captor's hold only to realize that it was futile as he stared directly into Naruto's eyes. Naruto didn't even spare the prisoner a glance before he tossed the man aside and into no through the tree and breaking the man's back before he continued forward. Acting quickly, the person quickly performed a few hand signs before a thick blanket of mist rolled in, obscuring Naruto's eyesight. "Foolish," was all Naruto said as he closed his eyes and relied on his ears. Silently he stood there before he heard the rustling of cloth come from behind him and sidestepped the chain that gouged out a thin line in the earth. Shortly after he began to dodge left, right, bending backwards and jumping as the chain slashes became faster but at the same time lost some of their power and grace. "Look at you. You're blindly attacking without thinking about your moves and are instead running off of your rage," said Naruto before he completely vanished and reappeared behind the assassin. "Which has thus far weakened your sensing abilities," said Naruto as he held a kunai to the assassin's neck. All the assassin did was laugh before it turned into a puddle of water. All Naruto did was huff before jumping back just as a chain shot out of the ground and a person following after. Not wasting an opportunity, Naruto immediately rushed the person and quickly sent a downward claw swipe and ripped through the person's shirt, showing medical tape underneath. Immediately after, the person was throwing random strikes with the chain at Naruto and got a few well-placed strikes in before the chain was broken by Naruto, sending a chakra stomp on the chain when it got stuck in the ground. The assassin then took off towards Naruto, bring the clawed gauntlet down only for Naruto to sidestep the attack and bring a kunai down on the medical bindings, showing that the assassin was a female. "Ah shit," thought Naruto as he started to dodge more and more strikes coming from the rage-driven female. It didn't take him long to find an opening in the female assassin's brawling style, so he could slip around her and landed a solid chop to the back of her neck, knocking her out cold. The second she was out cold, the mist lifted and allowed for Naruto to see that they had done a fair share of damage to the surrounding landscape. Several trees had gouges in them, as did the ground from the female assassin's chain whip. It was while surveying the landscape that he took notice of the two shredded logs in the same position of that Hinata and Kakashi once stood. Idiot. Of course she would have used substitution. Mentally berated Naruto as he quickly unsealed a blanket and wrapped it around the female assassin and carried her to a nearby tree while Natsuki brought the other one over and Naruto quickly tied them there with ninja wire. "Well, I'd give you a 10 for defeating both of the assassins if it weren't for the fact that you nearly completely destroyed the surrounding landscape," said a lazy voice from behind him. Calmly he turned his head slightly to the left to see Kakashi standing there reading his porn and Hinata standing right beside him. "Well, I think that Naruto handled the situation rather well, although I wish it was my clothing that was being ripped rather than hers," said Hinata as she approached Naruto, who held a deep red blush and held him in a gentle hug and kicked the female assassin at the same time. "That was a risky move you did, Kakashi-sensei. You had better stop reading that porn or else you may lose more than your life next time." "Now then, Hinata, are you alright?" asked Naruto as he turned his attention to Hinata. "Yeah, I'm alright, but thanks for caring," said Hinata as she lightly kissed Naruto's nose before removing herself from him. "Is that a threat, Namikaze?" asked Kakashi as he placed his book away and stared at Naruto questioningly. "No, and apparently you haven't taken notice of who our uninvited guests are. So to save you some time and a headache, they are the Demon Brothers of the Mist, and it seems as if they were misnamed. Anyway, they are well-known assassins that work for Zabuza. That means that Zabuza is nearby or we'll be meeting him sometime in the future," said Naruto as he quickly created a clone and told it to watch over their guests. Now then, Tazuna, Hinata mentioned earlier that Nami no Kuni has been under the influence of Geto. "Care to elaborate?" said Naruto in a tone that clearly showed he wasn't very pleased. "Fine. On the surface, Geto seems like a legitimate businessman. The truth is though is that he's a ruthless murdering criminal, employs gangs and teams of shinobi, and does traffic in the drug and slave rings around the elemental nations. He usually starts out by taking over companies and ruining countries for his own sick pleasure. Just as the young Hyuga said nearly a year ago that Gato set his sights on the land of waves. He came under the guise of a business venture. Then the violence began, and in no time at all he'd taken complete control over our entire marine transportation and shipping industry, and we were all under his thumb. Gato now has a strong hold on all forms of transportation, the lifeblood of an island nation, and a strong hold on all the wealth. The only thing that he has to fear is that which has been under construction for some time, my bridge," said Tazuna as he looked at the group with sadness in his eyes. "I think I understand, with you being the architect of the bridge it makes you a perfect target. Which also means that Zabuza is also working for Gato," said Sasuke as she stared at the two captured ninja, one which was asleep and the other just glared at them despite the pain. "But I still don't understand, if you knew that you were a target of a ruthless thug with ninja at his disposal, why didn't you tell us when you asked for our help?" asked Kakashi as he looked at Tazuna lazily, but to those who understood him could clearly tell that he was watching his body movement for the slightest lie, no matter how small. "It's because Nami no Kuni isn't over-prosperous, even the local lords are poor. Apparently you have no money either. Even with all the money that the people possibly had and the lords backing him, a B-rank mission would have still cost him too much. Right, Tazuna?" said Natsuki as she looked at him with a smirk on her face. "Yes. But if you all turn away from me now, then I'm as good as dead." "Oh well, it's not your concern. You won't be there to see my daughter and 10-year-old grandson cry all day like their hearts are breaking," said Tazuna as he turned away from the group of ninjas. But started Kakashi, only to be interrupted. "Well, it's not your fault. Oh. And you won't mind if my daughter vows eternal hatred of all the ninja of your village as she lives her life alone," said Tazuna as he started to cry. "Well, I suppose it can't be helped. We'll continue to protect you, at least until you return to your country," said Kakashi with a forced smile. "Haha, I win," whispered Tazuna with a victory smirk. "I still don't think it would be best to continue this mission, at least without some form of backup. All we know is that Gato has possibly several hired missing nin underneath him. Then there is the fact that we have no knowledge as to how many thugs Gato has. It also doesn't help that we will be running into Zabuza Mamachi, the demon of the hidden mist, sometime in the future," said Naruto logically as he looked at the others to see that Hinata, Sasuke, Natsuki and Tazuna were agreeing to the logic presented to them. "You have valid points, and as such you have made an appropriate call. Which team are we going to request?" asked Kakashi after a short while. "Team 10. With Kiba and Shino being the tracker types, we could use them to keep an eye on any of the workers working on the bridge, just in case one or more of them attempt to betray Tazuna for the safety of their family. If Sakura has been training under Kurenai, then she should be above average with Ninjutsu, which could in handy if we need to make a quick retreat," suggested Sasuke as they began to discuss what team they would need for backup. "You can't be serious, Kiba is a pervert and I can't guarantee that he won't be missing a limb or two if he tries to peek on either of you girls," said Naruto with a growl. "Team 8. There is Ino, who can gather information directly from the opponent's mind, Choji excels in his family jutsu, and Shikamaru is an absolute genius," said Hinata as they continued to discuss the teams. "No way in hell. Ino is a loudmouth brat who is also one of my lesbian fangirls. Choji, well, he is nice as to easily upset about his figure, and Shikamaru, even though he is a genius, he is beyond lazy. So absolutely out of the question," said Sasuke as she carefully said figure, fearing Choji coming out of the bushes to beat her into the ground. Shortly after, the group fell into silence. "What about Team 9? suggested Naruto after a short while, and Hinata seemed to brighten at the suggestion. "That could work, especially since they are usually free after their sensei's training," said Hinata. "And plus it would torture Kakashi to no end," said Natsuki with an evil smile. "Summoning jutsu?" said Naruto as he slammed his hand on the ground and a poof of smoke followed after. Slowly the smoke disappeared, showing a small white fox kit with a single tail, red eyes and some black on the tip of its tail and paws. "Hello Yuki. I have a special job for you," said Naruto as he held out his hand, allowing for the young kit to climb up to his shoulder. "What do you need, Naruto-sama?" asked Yuki as she gently rubbed her face against his. "For starters, don't call me Naruto-sama, and second, I need for you to go tell the Hokage that our client lied about the mission ranking and that we are requesting backup from Team 9. "Alright?" asked Naruto as he looked Yuki straight in the eyes. "Of course, Naruto, but I need to know what about my payment?" asked Yuki as she looked at Naruto questioningly. "Just bother the old man about, alright?" said Naruto with a small smile. "Okay," said Yuki as she jumped off of Naruto's shoulder and took off running down the path that they had just come from. "I suggest that we continue moving so that way we can cover more ground before the day is over. Besides, I want to be in Nami no Kuni before tomorrow afternoon," said Naruto as he started to walk down the path with the girls following him along with Kakashi. "Hey, wait a minute, aren't you going to wait for your backup?" asked Tazuna as he ran to catch up with them. "Why should we? They have been out of the ninja academy for well over a year now and thus should have the necessary training to catch up with us," said Hinata rather coldly. Still having problems with your cousin Hinata? Asked Naruto as he focused his thoughts on Hinata. Yeah. He says that it was fate that is allowing for me to be free. I'm so sick and tired of hearing the same old shit that he keeps on saying about fate dictating every move that we make. It almost makes me wish that he would just die for his stupidity. Mentally thought Hinata as venom dripped off of a good majority of her words. Now Hinata, you, Naruto, Natsuki, and I know that you don't mean that. It's just your frustration talking to you. Thought Sasuke. I know, but it's so annoying. Mentally whined Hinata. Hinata, how about when we stop for the night I'll give you a massage? Will that help? Asked Naruto as he looked at her from the corner of his eyes. Yes, I would like that, Naruto-kun. Thought Hinata as she smiled at him. Alright team, I think that we have traveled fat enough for the day. Said Kakashi as he knocked the genin out of their daze. But why? Asked Hinata as she looked at the sky to see that it was only midday. Well, for starters, we have no way across the ocean, 2 our backup still hasn't arrived, and 3 Tazuna is executed. Said Kakashi as he smiled at the team as they looked at Tazuna, who was wheezing slightly. Kakashi, couldn't we just water walk across the ocean? Asked Sasuke with one of her eyebrows raised as Tazuna collapsed onto a nearby log. Well, we could, but that would mean leaving our client here without any protection. So now we can use this time for training. Said Kakashi as his smile changed from one of kindness to one of a complete psycho. Now then team, I want you to begin water walking if you would be so kind. Said Kakashi as his smile returned to normal and 3 more of him popped into existence beside him. Mumbling curses under their breath, the genin did as they were told and started to water walk 5 feet out from the shoreline while Kakashi's clones stood at the shore. Silently they stood there, the students glaring holes into their teacher's clones while the clones just stared at them with boredom. Neither of the 6 of them moving an inch before Naruto jumped back, Hinata to the right and Sasuke forward as 3 Kakashi clones attempted to grab the genin ankles. Fire style. Grand Fireball Jutsu. Shouted Sasuke as she breathed out a doghouse-sized fireball and sent it straight towards the Kakashi clone that was pulling itself out of the water. Acting quickly, the Kakashi clone quickly performed substitution with Hinata, who was in her gentle fist stance. Water style. Water Dragon Jutsu. Quickly said Hinata as she performed the hand signs at a rate faster than what she would normally do. Shortly after, the water began to churn beneath her feet as the dragon slowly circled around her before it rose up around her and then dived straight towards the fireball. The second the 2 opposing elements collided, an explosion occurred obscuring both Hinata's and Sasuke's vision. Wind style.